The story begins with our protagonist walking up to a building, her earpods playing the Lemon Top 100 song playlist. She finally arrived at the Seoul Cultural Center. The center had a total area of 54,883 square meters, consisting of 4 basement floors and 7 ground floors. It was a prestigious venue, reserved for famous orchestras and performers from overseas when they visited Korea. "Wow," our protagonist exclaimed, feeling a rush of excitement as she stepped inside. "Here is the list of today's performances," a woman who appeared to be the supervisor said, handing her a piece of paper. The protagonist looked up, marveling at the chandelier with its turning doves. "You said you're here on behalf of Gina, right?" the supervisor asked. Yes," the protagonist replied. "We're short of staff this week, so you'll only need to help out for today. You should get changed into your uniform. Follow me," the supervisor instructed. "Thanks to Gina, I get to visit a place like this," she thought as she followed the supervisor. Our protagonist remembered how she got the job. Her phone rang one morning. It was Gina. "Hey, Gina. What's up?" she exclaimed excitedly. "Hayeon, do you think you can fill in for me at the concert hall for just one day?" "I can't make it. My mom was rushed to the hospital," Gina explained, revealing the protagonist's name. "Is she okay? Can't you ask another employee to fill in for you?" Hayeon asked, concerned. "A lot of my co-workers took their annual leave and are away on a trip. It's also the training period, so we're short on staff. It's just for a day, please. I'll take you out to dinner, my treat," Gina promised. "Free dinner for me? Not such a bad deal. I should pick an expensive place to eat," Hayeon thought, drooling at the memory of Gina's promise. "Miss Ji Sehun will help you once you start your shift. You'll be taking over Gina's role as a ticket collector. It's very simple. All you have to do is check their tickets and show them to their seats," the supervisor told Hayeon. "Okay," Hayeon exclaimed, affirming she understood her role. "I was worried it might be a difficult job, but thank God it isn't," she thought. "According to the schedule, you'll have to check the second floor for the 10 a.m. performance, the third floor for the 2 p.m. performance, and when that's done, you can prepare for the 4 p.m. performance," the supervisor explained, prompting a will-do from Hayeon. "It's going to be quite busy today since it's the weekend. Please be extra attentive for the 4 p.m. performance in Aurora Hall," the supervisor instructed. "Extra attentive? Does she want me to be extra careful?" Hayeon pondered as she listened attentively. "Oh, and no matter what, do not go into that room," the supervisor said, pointing to a room at the far end of the hallway. Hayeon observed the door closely from where she stood, noticing a poster of a cellist named Ji Sehun on it. "Okay, I don't see why I would even need to go in there," she thought inwardly. In the dressing room, she finally changed into Gina's uniform. "Phew, I can't even breathe in this." It's just a day anyway," Hayeon said, finding the uniform a bit uncomfortable. Stepping out from the staff room, the supervisor waited for her. "The uniform suits you well," she remarked, seeing it fit Hayeon. "You said you're currently looking for a job?" the supervisor asked. "Yeah, I took a break after quitting my previous job, and now I'm ready to work again," Hayeon replied. "Then you wouldn't have any trouble memorizing information, right?" the supervisor asked. "Will I need to?" Hayeon asked, puzzled by the question. "General information is all in the pamphlet, but just in case, it'll be helpful to study this before beginning your shift," the supervisor told her, handing Hayeon a pamphlet. "That's true. It won't look good for me if I can't answer anything about the performances," Hayeon thought, observing the bulk of the pamphlets. "It's a brief summary of the performances. Take a look at it in the lounge since you still have some time before the morning assembly at 9 a.m., the supervisor told her. "Got it," Hayeon said with a smile. In the staff quarters, Hayeon studied the pamphlet the supervisor gave her. Why is there so much information?" she exclaimed as she read. 4 p.m. performance, Ji Sehun, she read. Her eyes widened as she saw his age. Age 24? Wait, seriously? Is it a typo? She leaned forward, now reading the pamphlet seriously. Genius cellist recognized by the chief conductor of the Berlin Philharmonic. He discovered his musical talent at the age of 4. After listening to a recording of a collaboration he participated in with the Orchestre Philharmonique de Radio France at the age of 11, Franz Sarayan, the greatest conductor of the time, expressed his admiration for Ji Sehun, describing his presence as the reincarnation of Orpheus, the god of music. At the age of 10, Ji Sehun became the youngest person in history to win an international cello competition, receiving unanimous praise from the judges. By the age of 12, Ji Sehun was performing side by side with the world's greatest orchestras. With such incredible fame, there was no room for inconsistencies in his performances. He received praise for his overwhelming skill and interpretation of music each time he performed. Ji Sehun became the youngest performer to join the Berlin Philharmonic. Currently, he has signed a contract with Sorrento Management, a world-class classical recording label, and he is performing globally. Wow, he's accomplished a lot, Hayeon exclaimed after reading his profile. I don't know much about his profile, but it says a lot that he's able to perform at Seoul Cultural Center's largest hall at only 24 years old. Her phone alarm rang, indicating it was 9 a.m. Ah, time for the morning assembly, she said, walking out of the room swiftly. The 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. concerts went by smoothly. Now, I just need to get through the 4 p.m. concert. I knew I was going to adapt quickly, just like I always do, Hayeon thought, feeling good about herself as she blushed. Hi, may I check your ticket, please? She asked 2 girls who approached her. Here you go, they said, handing her their tickets. After clearing them, the girls walked into the hall, blushing. Most of the audience are women, Hayeon observed, noting the tickets in her hand. Ji Sehun, was it? The seats for this concert are already full, even though it's 20 minutes before the show starts, she thought, quickly noticing the supervisor approaching her. Hayeon, good work today, the supervisor said as she approached her. I didn't really do much, but thank you, Hayeon replied with a smile. Your legs must be sore. I'll take it from here. Go ahead and get some rest, the supervisor told her. Oh, if you insist, thank you. I'd better go check my phone for any callbacks from the companies I applied to. Not being able to have my phone with me while I work is quite the inconvenience, Hayeon thought inwardly as she walked hurriedly towards the staff room. She came to a halt upon seeing an employee standing in front of the room she was instructed earlier not to enter. She observed the co-worker's leg shaking as she bit her nails in confusion. Ugh, what do I do? The lady wondered softly to herself, her gaze fixed on the door, her finger gently pressed against her teeth as she pondered her next move, a troubled expression clouding her face. Excuse me, is there something wrong? Hayeon asked, approaching the lady. You are? The lady said, puzzled as she observed Hayeon's name tag. I'm filling in for a friend, Hayeon told her. Oh, you're filling in for Gina, aren't you? The lady asked. Yeah, but what are you doing here? Hayeon inquired. I think I may have dropped my phone in the waiting room while I was cleaning. I can't find it anywhere, the lady said, turning away from Hayeon. Why don't you just call it? Hayeon asked innocently. No. Never. The lady said, gripping Hayeon's arm, her voice sounding scared. If he finds out that someone left their belongings behind in his waiting room, it'll be a huge problem. But if my phone rings? The lady paused as both of them fixed their gaze on the door. Hayeon didn't utter a word for a moment. Is there anyone inside? She asked. Well, the lady said, unsure. Hayeon looked at her watch. It's 5 minutes before the 4 p.m. performance begins. The seats are already full. Wouldn't the room be empty by now? She questioned. The seats are full? The lady asked, looking surprised. Yeah, I don't think anyone is in there, Hayeon told her. The co-worker went silent, her facial expression turning sad as she became tense once more. She couldn't utter any words as she trembled, turning her gaze away from Hayeon. It's just your phone in there that you need, right? Hayeon asked her suddenly. The lady looked at her, dumbfounded by the question. Do you remember where you might have dropped it? Hayeon asked. I think it was near the sofa. I remember bending down to lay a few magazines on the table. I'm sure it was in my pocket, the lady said, recalling the last time she saw her phone. "Ah," she mustered in fear. "I'll go get it," Hayeon said, sounding brave. "Really?" the lady asked, sounding excited. "Sure, I'm pretty sure no one is inside," Hayeon reassured her before gently opening the door, which made a creak. She opened it a little more, making enough room for her to slip through. "See? Told you no one would be inside," she said, looking back at the lady once more. Hayeon stepped into the room gently, trying her best not to make a sound despite the darkness. "It should be around here somewhere," she thought as she bent down, feeling the table with her hand blindly in search of the phone. Suddenly, someone grabbed her hand. Hayeon stayed still, unable to see the person who held her properly as the only light came from the sliver through the door's crack. Ji Sehun held her hand tightly. "Who told you you're allowed in here?" he asked harshly. She kept quiet, unable to utter a word. Her eyes widened as she realized she had been caught by Ji Sehun. "How many times do I need to repeat myself?" "Close the door," Ji Sehun demanded, covering his face to block the light. "Okay, I will, but can you let me go first?" Hayeon asked, feeling a bit scared. "You stay right there," Ji Sehun told her, his voice firm. I'm really sorry. I'm here to find something. I'll leave as soon as I find it." "Sorry for the inconvenience," Hayeon said. "You're telling me you left something in my room?" Ji Sehun asked, sitting up from his resting position. The flash from the phone glowed from under Ji Sehun's chair, catching Hayeon's eye. She leaned forward, stretching her hand to retrieve the phone. "Really?" she said calmly, grasping the lady's phone. "I'm sorry," Hayeon said, jolting her hand out of Ji Sehun's grasp, prompting him to shout, "Ah!" Hayeon dashed away from him, making it to the door. She slammed it behind her, her face turning red from the encounter. Where did she go? She wondered, looking down the hallway but not seeing the lady she had helped. "Forget it, I need to get out of here," she said, hurrying away from the hallway. Inside the room, Ji Sehun raised his arm, observing it closely. "Hey, Sehun, let's go. It's time for your performance," his assistant said, entering the waiting room. Ji Sehun didn't reply, still focused on his hand. "What are you worried about? Your performances are always the best. Tickets have been sold out for the past 3 days, and today isn't an exception," his assistant reassured him. "Postpone it," Ji Sehun said coldly. "What?" the assistant stuttered. "Again? What are you talking about?" "Everyone is waiting for you out there," he questioned, feeling confused. "We even skipped rehearsals today because you said you weren't in a good mood." Ji Sehun remained silent, still lost in his thoughts. "Even the staff members are waiting for you with their fingers crossed, hoping there aren't any technical difficulties," his assistant said. "Postpone it," Ji Sehun repeated, looking uninterested. "We already did. You were supposed to start at 4 p.m. sharp. We are already 10 minutes behind," his assistant said, growing more anxious. "I'm not performing," Ji Sehun stated awkwardly. "Not performing?" When 850 people, who paid up to 400,000 won per ticket, are waiting. Even if we give them a refund, the complaints will be overwhelming, his assistant thought, feeling scared. "Did something happen? What's wrong?" he asked, confused. Ji Sehun kept playing with his arm, not uttering a word. "Someone was in here," he finally said. "What?" the assistant exclaimed in disbelief. "My hand. They even yanked it," Ji Sehun said, showing him his hand. "Someone came in and yanked your hand? Who was it?" the assistant asked in horror. Ji Sehun remained silent, deep in thought, as his assistant struggled to grasp the situation. "I don't know. I want to know as well. Which is why you'll cancel today's show," Ji Sehun said in a relaxed manner. His assistant dropped to his knees. "Please, today is the final concert. You know this is the most important performance. Help me out here, please. When have I ever forced you to perform when you didn't want to? It's just today, please," he begged. "I admit I shouldn't have scheduled shows 4 days in a row. But it's been 3 years since you performed in Korea. We don't want to start off on the wrong foot," he pleaded. "You're aware my contract has a clause that prohibits anyone from entering the waiting room," right? Ji Sehun asked, turning towards him. Yes, the assistant replied. Yet someone did. Any thoughts? Ji Sehun asked with a faint smile, causing the manager to become more tense. I'm sorry, it's all my fault. I'll do whatever it takes to find out who came in here, the assistant said, bowing his head in regret. We can discuss this matter after the show, but please, you have to perform. Ji Sehun held out his hands, gripping one with the other, and squeezed lightly. He sighed and got up from his chair. You'll find her? He asked his assistant. Yes, of course, his assistant replied, feeling a surge of relief and excitement. Keep your word, Ji Sehun said with a serious gaze. Oh right, your jacket, his assistant said, looking around in confusion before finally finding it. He giggled nervously as he helped Ji Sehun put it on. The manager breathed a sigh of relief, glad to see Ji Sehun willing to perform. They both walked outside, leaving the waiting room behind. I understand you're not in the best mood right now, but once you get up on stage and the light hits you, everything will be okay, his assistant said cheerfully as he walked behind Ji Sehun. Shut up, Ji Sehun snapped, causing his assistant to fall silent in shock. Ugh, this jerk, he thought, still in shock. Being a genius is an excuse for everything, isn't it? He wondered. Wait for me, he called, trying to catch up with Ji Sehun. The crowd waited in anticipation, chattering among themselves. The cellist stood backstage. Hand it over, Ji Sehun said coldly, sticking his hand out for his cello. Hurry, his assistant urged, nudging a man holding the instrument. The man quickly handed the cello to Ji Sehun. Sehun, good luck, his assistant said, trying to sound upbeat despite the tension. Find her, Ji Sehun replied, his face unmoved. He walked up to the stage holding his cello, and the crowd erupted in cheers upon seeing him. Ji Sehun walked calmly to his seat, giving the audience a quick glance before beginning to play. The crowd clapped in amazement as he started. Ji Sehun played with incredible dexterity, gripping his cello firmly as he ran the bow expertly over the strings. His concentration deepened as he sank into the music, and the crowd was captivated by the tone and emotion of his performance. Beads of sweat formed on his face as he continued to play. As he concluded his performance, he looked up to see the audience, who were awestruck. When he finished, he was met with a sea of applause. Ji Sehun paused and gave a slight bow, keeping his gaze fixed on the floor, not uttering a word. Ji Sehun imagined Hayeon's face as he couldn't decipher how she looked. He imagined her stretching her hand towards him before he comes back to reality. He grips his bow, getting up from his seat, the crowd's clap growing louder. His pianist bows to the crowd, but he heads back to the backstage unmoved. Fuck this, he says as he walked away. On getting to the backstage, the man retrieves back the cello as he bowed a bit shaky. Sehun, good work out there. You were amazing. Today's performance was your best ever, his assistant remarked, looking happy. Where is she? Ji Sehun demanded, flexing his wrist, looking at it with a stern look. Come with me, I'll take it to her, he tells Ji Sehun, holding his back leading the way. You were great out there, his pianist said, blocking them. Are you going to reject my handshake this time as well? She said, offering her hand, wearing a warm look. We closed out the show together. I think a handshake is the least we can do, she tells Ji Sehun warmly. Ji Sehun watched her silently for a brief moment. Did you wash your hands? He asked coldly. Excuse me? She replied, looking tense. I don't shake hands with people who don't wash their hands, he said, walking away from her. Sorry about that, he's a bit busy today. Take care, his assistant said softly, wearing a warm smile as they walked past her, his hand still on Ji Sehun's shoulder. The lady stood behind, looking disappointed. Back in the staff room, all the staff were assembled for questioning. How many times do I need to ask who went inside that room? The manager demanded, his voice harsh, sending tension through the room. I suggest whoever it is come forward right now, he demanded angrily. I don't think any of you understand the severity of this situation. Do you think I gathered you all here because I'm bored? He asked, casting his glance at Hayeon. Hayeon felt a lump in her throat as the manager's eyes lingered on her. Can't they just watch the security camera footage? One staff member whispered to another. Apparently there isn't one in front of that room, the next staff member replied in a hushed tone. If you don't confess now, being laid off will not be the end of the consequences, the manager blurted out, threateningly. The manager walked across the room, passing each staff member slowly. Who the heck would get on the wrong side of Sehun? Do they not know how difficult it is to even schedule him to perform? Another staff member whispered. Whoever it was must have been out of their mind. Just because of that one person, we all have to suffer, another staff member muttered softly. Hayeon stood still, beads of sweat forming on her face as she grew more tense. From what I heard, whoever entered also grabbed Mr. Ji's hand, the manager said, adding to the tension. Hayeon fixed her gaze on the lady she had helped. She remained calm, her eyes steady and impassive as if she knew nothing. Fine. No one wants to come forward. The manager finally said, arms folded. I need to confess. I have to, Hayeon pondered, looking worried. At worst, I thought I had to encounter another member of staff in there. I didn't think it would be Ji Sehun himself, she thought, remembering their encounter in the waiting room. She recalled the cold look on his face as he held her. Come on, gather up the courage. If I keep dragging this out, it's only going to affect everyone else. Gina most of all, she thought, trembling as she held her shaking hand. Okay, let me confess, she thought with a sigh. Hayeon said, raising her hand. Sir, you're here, the manager said, looking at Ji Sehun as he entered the room, taking no notice of Hayeon. She looked shocked upon seeing Ji Sehun. The room fell silent as everyone turned their attention to Ji Sehun. Hayeon's heart pounded in her chest. Ji Sehun scanned the room, his eyes cold and calculating. The room was filled with tense silence as Ji Sehun scrutinized each staff member. Hayeon's heart pounded in her chest, her palms growing sweaty. She tried to remain calm, but the fear of being discovered made it difficult. Is it correct that one of our staff members entered your room to collect their belongings? The manager asked Ji Sehun, his voice wavering with nervousness. A cell phone, Ji Sehun replied coldly. 67 staff in total are working today, the manager said, pointing to the lined-up staff. So, you're telling me to find her myself? Ji Sehun raised an eyebrow. Whoever it is won't come forward. What other choice do we have? It'll be more accurate since you are the only one who saw her, don't you agree? His assistant added, trying to sound friendly as he placed a hand on Ji Sehun's shoulder. Hayeon felt a lump in her throat but stayed silent. Okay then. Let's see, Ji Sehun said, his gaze shifting to the lined-up women. He stepped forward, approaching them one by one. Look up at me, he demanded, startling the first lady who had her head bowed. She lifted her head gently, and after observing her closely, Ji Sehun turned away. Next, he said, moving to the next staff member. He scrutinized her for a moment. Nope. Next, he said again, moving on. As Ji Sehun approached Hayeon's position, she grew more tense, her heart racing faster. Next, he said, moving nearer to her. Hayeon closed her eyes, anticipating the worst as she heard him say next, just beside her. Ji Sehun stopped in front of Hayeon and lifted her face by her chin. Ah, she said softly, unsure of what he was looking for. He stared deeply into her eyes, making her feel even more terrified. Ji Sehun said nothing. He let go of her chin. Phew, that was close, she thought, sighing with relief. But in an instant, Ji Sehun grabbed hold of her hand. Hayeon was shocked, her face turning red from shame. It's you, isn't it? The one that came into my room, he said, wearing a smirk. Ji Sehun grasped Hayeon's hand, dragging her as he made his way out of the room. The other staff members looked on in stunned silence, unsure of what to do. Ah, wait, Hayeon pleaded as Ji Sehun pulled her along against her will. Everyone watched in amazement. Ha! Where are you going? Ji Sehun's assistant questioned. To find out what she was doing in my room, Ji Sehun replied almost immediately. Follow me, he ordered Hayeon, finally letting go of her hand. Leading her to a room. Should I run away? What would happen if I just turned around and ran? Hayeon thought as she followed Ji Sehun into a room. No, let me at least hear him out, she decided, still looking terrified. Ji Sehun pulled off his jacket, dropping it on a table. You touched my things, didn't you? He said, turning to look at Hayeon as he removed his tie. Excuse me? I don't know what you mean, Hayeon said, her hands clasped tightly, looking scared. Tell me what you touched, Ji Sehun asked her as he sat down. I'm not the type to touch other people's belongings, Hayeon told him. So, you don't touch other people's things, just break into their space, huh? Ji Sehun said, unable to believe her. Hayeon remained quiet, closing her eyes for a moment. I'm truly sorry for entering your room without permission, she said confidently. Ji Sehun watched her without uttering a word. Please understand, I wasn't trying to touch anything of yours. I was just trying to find something that I'd dropped earlier, she explained. Ji Sehun held his hand to his face, frustration evident. After a brief silence, he uncovered his eyes slightly. How dare you? He said harshly. Excuse me? Hayeon asked, unsure of what he meant. As far as I know, you're not supposed to have your personal belongings on you during your shifts, he told her. Now that I think about it, did you install something in my waiting room? You're more of a pervert than a thief, aren't you? Ji Sehun scoffed, resting his arm on his chair. Is that clear enough for you? He asked Hayeon. Thief? Pervert? Hayeon thought, dumbfounded by his accusations. There's a lot of crazy people nowadays. I'm not even surprised. Ji Sehun was about to continue when Hayeon, unable to contain her anger, hit him with her hand, silencing him. What did you say? Pervert? Crazy? She repeated, her voice rising. You're the one who dragged me all the way here. Wouldn't you consider this crazy based on your logic? Ji Sehun looked taken aback, watching her quietly. Wake up, you are only 24. I'm older than you, she said, stopping for a moment, her face turning red as she observed his stare. Be grateful that I didn't slap you across the face. And this time I didn't go near that precious hand of yours. I have nothing to do with what you're accusing me of, so if you want to make a scene, why don't you just call the police? With that, Hayeon stormed out of the room, slamming the door hard behind her. Kim Hayeon stood in front of the elevator, pressing the button repeatedly, still looking a bit terrified. What's taking so long? She muttered, tapping the button anxiously. What if he comes after me? She thought, glancing back nervously. Finally, she thought as the elevator doors slid open. She hurried inside, pressing the close button rapidly. As the doors shut, she breathed a sigh of relief. I can't believe it. What have I done? She said softly to herself, her heart still racing. Meanwhile, Ji Sehun remained seated in the room, stunned and unsure of what to do next. After a moment, he stood up and walked slowly to the bathroom. He turned on the tap and washed his hands, staring at his reflection in the mirror without saying a word. That chick is out of her mind, he murmured softly. He wiped his hands with a towel and glanced down at them, lost in thought. At that moment, he noticed a phone on the sink. Looks like she was in a hurry. She left something behind, Ji Sehun murmured to himself as he swiped through the phone, examining the photos in the gallery. However, his brows furrowed in confusion as he realized the photos didn't belong to Hayeon. Just then, the phone began ringing. Ji Sehun picked up the call immediately. Hello? Kim Hayeon. I appreciate your help earlier, but don't you think you should return my phone now? The caller said. He listened quietly. Kim Hayeon. He thought aloud, a realization dawning on him. He made his way back to the room, pondering the caller's words. Is that her name? He wondered, a sense of urgency rising within him. As he reached for his own phone, he hesitated before typing a message. You don't think this is because of me, do you? The caller continued, her voice tense with concern. Ji Sehun quickly navigated to his messages, typing in Kim Hayeon's name in the message box. It was you who offered to go inside and get my phone for me when I was hesitating to. I was waiting outside because I was afraid someone might still be inside his room, the caller explained to Ji Sehun. This is Ji Sehun, he finally introduced himself. How old is she? He questioned, referring to Hayeon. Excuse me? The caller responded, caught off guard by the sudden inquiry. The girl who came into my waiting room. To find the phone you left behind. How old is she? Ji Sehun pressed for an answer. The caller hesitated before replying. Are you not going to say? He demanded. Sir, I'm really sorry. I really didn't mean to leave it behind. I was checking your room before your big performance when it happened, she pleaded. If you're sorry, answer my question, Ji Sehun demanded, his tone firm as he sat down. She was actually filling in for a day on behalf of Gina. She's a friend of hers, she explained. Ah, that's right. She's 26, she added after a moment. And? Ji Sehun prodded, typing in her age alongside Hayeon's name. The caller asked, confused by his insistence. Tell me everything you know about her, Ji Sehun demanded, his tone growing more serious. That's it, the lady replied, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Ji Sehun sat back, contemplating the situation. Then it looks like there's some investigation to do, he said. I guess? Replied the caller, uncertain of what to do next. Get to it, he instructed firmly. Excuse me? She asked, taken aback by his directive. Should I make a call to the manager and ask? Ji Sehun suggested. No sir, I'll do it. Let me ask around and get back to you, she assured him before Ji Sehun ended the call. He leaned back in his chair, before placing his hand against his face. He rubbed his temples as a headache started to form. Meanwhile, outside the Seoul Cultural Center, two staff members gossiped amongst themselves, unaware of someone eavesdropping nearby. Who in their right mind would mess with Ji Sehun? One staff member wondered aloud. I know, right? He's the last person you want to mess with, replied the second staff member. Exactly. He's like the cultural asset of this country, the first staff member remarked. That certainly explains his privileged attitude. He's probably not scared of anything. Do you think he will let this one slide? The second staff member asked, their voices tinged with concern. Of course not, I'm just hoping it doesn't affect us, the second staff member replied, expressing concern. Meanwhile, the lady who had been eavesdropping felt a pang of anxiety. Shoot, she muttered to herself, feeling tense. Are you done using my phone? The owner asked, gesturing towards her. Oh sorry, just one last call, the eavesdropper explained hastily. Do you know Lee Gina's phone number by any chance? She inquired, hoping to gather more information about Hayeon. After obtaining the number, the lady made another call to Ji Sehun. So I called Gina and she's claiming she doesn't know her and that she is not actually friends with her, she informed him. Ji Sehun remained silent as he listened intently. I know for a fact that they're the same age, but she won't disclose any more information, she continued. Looks like I don't have a choice, Ji Sehun said finally, indicating that further action was necessary. Excuse me? She asks him, bewildered by his sudden change in tone. Did you forget? You left your phone in my room. You need to pay for that, don't you agree? Ji Sehun tells her sternly. Sir, I'm really sorry about that. It was a terrible mistake. I had an important call that I was waiting for. If the center finds out that I had my phone during my shift, she begins to explain, but Ji Sehun interrupts her. Fine, since you did such a good job as bait, I'll be lenient this one time, he tells her, surprising her with his unexpected leniency. What? She asks in confusion, unsure of what he means. I'll let you off the hook, because you brought her to me, he says, smiling slightly. Where did he go? Ji Sehun's manager wondered as he sat down somewhere in the building. His phone rang, it was Ji Sehun. Where are you? I've been worried sick. His manager said upon answering the call. You have? Ji Sehun asked with a smile. Of course. Where are you? His manager repeated. I'm not a kid, you know, Ji Sehun said, examining his hand. I found the person who left their phone behind in my room earlier. Yeah, I know, his manager replied. You found her? He added, his face showing surprise. It wasn't her. Someone else left it in there, and then the other one went inside to grab it for her, Ji Sehun explained. Let's close this case, he said, his fist clenched. Wait, what? We've been pressuring the director about their negligence towards the artist. Are you sure you want to stop now? This is clearly a breach of contract. We can nab a better deal, his manager argued. That's not necessary. There's someone else I need to go after, Ji Sehun said. He ended the call and pressed send on his message. I should go wash up now, Ji Sehun said, dropping his phone as he headed for the bathroom. His message, delivered, read, Kim Hayeon, 26. Find her. In the city, Hayeon was in a taxi. Sir, can you wait for me here? I'll go inside and grab my wallet. I don't really have anything on me to leave with you. But I live in apartment 405 in this building right here, she said, pointing at her apartment. Hey, working with people for this long gives me the ability to see through someone just by looking in their eyes. Your eyes are pure and kind, the driver said with a smile. I'll wait here, go on, he tells her. Thank you. I'll be back soon, Hayeon said as she got out of the car. Hey, Hayeon. Gina called, prompting Hayeon to turn in her direction. Huh? Gina, what are you doing here? Hayeon said excitedly as she approached Gina. Where have you been all this time, and why haven't you been answering your phone? Oh, I need to pay the taxi driver my fare, she told Gina immediately. How much is it? Is this enough? Gina asked, digging into her purse and handing Hayeon some money. Yes, perfect. Thanks. I'll pay you back as soon as we get upstairs, Hayeon told Gina, grateful for her help. Hurry up and pay the man, Gina urged. Hayeon paid the driver, saying thank you sir, before breathing a sigh of relief. You really know how to cause trouble, don't you? Gina remarked with a cheerful look. Back at Hayeon's apartment, she narrated the entire story to Gina. He dragged you out? Gina asked in shock. Yeah, to confront me about what I did in the waiting room, Hayeon replied, her face looking sad. I did hear that he was a jerk, but he's crazier than I thought, Gina said, raising her voice. Yeah, I agree. He's insane, Hayeon said softly. Sue him. Gina demanded. No, I can't. They told me not to go into his room, and yet I still did, Hayeon said calmly. It's not like he's the police. How could he just drag you out and interrogate you like that? Gina asked, still not comfortable with Hayeon's calm nature. I just don't ever want to see him again, Hayeon replied with a smile. Are you okay? You're not in shock? Gina asked, looking concerned. Not at all, Hayeon replied calmly. I felt overwhelmed rather than shocked, she thought to herself. That man, he didn't even get angry with me. If he decides to sue me, there's a lot of things that'll be a problem on my side. I caused trouble at your workplace, I yanked his hand, and smacked his head, she explained to Gina. I heard about his hand from the manager, but you even hit his head? Gina asked, looking shocked. Yeah, Hayeon replied softly. He didn't hit you back? Gina questioned, looking tense. Huh? No, Hayeon replied awkwardly. Whoa, Ji Sehun just sat there when you hit him? Gina asked, her mouth agape. He's not the type of person who would tolerate that. Once, I heard he stopped an active construction site just because he didn't like the view from his room. Apparently, he had a nice view before they started constructing a 3-story building. He came back from Germany after his orchestral tour and just said one thing. I haven't seen this before. And the very next day, his family bought the building and put a halt to all the construction. After all, he is the second son of Daemyeong Group, Gina told Hayeon. What? Daemyeong? Hayeon asked, her mouth wide open in shock. Yeah, it's a well-known fact. You didn't know? From what I heard, they have 3 sons, but Ji Sehun wasn't even considered their next successor. They had no intention of having their precious son tainted with all that money talk, Gina explained. Hayeon was silent, processing this new information. Anyway, someone from the center called earlier and asked me if we were friends. It seemed sketchy, so I denied it. I told them I found you through the internet because I was in a rush to find someone to fill in for me. Just letting you know, Gina added. Hayeon didn't say a word, and a brief silence fell between them. You're right, you don't even have a job yet. Maybe I went too far mentioning a lawsuit, Gina said, touching Hayeon's hand in a bid to console her. Let's just think of it as a bad experience and forget about it. We can't consider that guy a normal person. He lives in a completely different world than us, Hayeon told her. Common sense doesn't exist with him. Don't ever get involved with him. Gina's cell phone rang. Hold on, my manager is calling me, Gina said, excusing herself to answer her phone. Yes? Ah, okay. I'll see you tomorrow, she said over the phone. After ending the call, Gina turned to Hayeon. Ji Sehun told the center that he won't be making an issue out of the situation. What? Hayeon asked, surprised. Earlier my manager was pissed and told me to come to work prepared for all the backlash, but now he's a total angel. Apparently, Ji Sehun said he's not going to be pressing charges against the center, Gina explained. It's a good thing, right? Hayeon asked, looking excited. Yeah, I guess, Gina replied softly. What got into him? As Gina held her phone, Hayeon noticed something and was suddenly taken aback. She quickly dipped her hand into her pocket in shock. Wait, where is my phone? She asked. Did you leave it at the center? Gina asked her. Hayeon replied, her hand still dipped in her pocket. She remembered dropping the lady's phone she retrieved on top of the sink. That wasn't even my phone, she said, looking shocked. What are you talking about? Also, where's your bag? Gina questioned. It's in the locker at the center, Hayeon told her. Okay, where's your phone? Gina asked again. I don't know, Hayeon said, looking lost in thought. Gina watched her quietly. I think I took it out from the locker, or maybe not. I don't know. Shoot, I have a lot of calls I'm waiting for, Hayeon said, her hand resting on the table as she held her head in confusion. Gina tried calling Hayeon's phone. Your phone is off. Maybe the battery died already. I'll keep calling it and check when I get into work tomorrow, she reassured Hayeon. The next day at the Seoul Cultural Center, Gina searched through her locker for Hayeon's bag. Not here, she muttered. Meanwhile, Ji Sehun practiced playing his cello in his study, his manager standing beside him. He played with much dexterity, the music filling the room with a precise and emotive sound. A lady walked into the study, holding a tablet and moving briskly. Oh, Miss Lee, you're here, Ji Sehun's manager said, welcoming her. Ji Sehun paused his play and stood up as Ms. Lee approached him. Are you done with your tantrums? Ms. Lee questioned, wearing a smile. Ji Sehun broke his cello's bow. Tell me everything you know, he demanded, tossing the broken bow to the floor. Kim Hayeon, age 26. This is the information you gave me. The rest of the details are in here, she said, handing him the tablet. Everything you want to know should be in there, Ms. Lee added as Ji Sehun went through the tablet. He's going to go through a lot of bows over the next few days, so make sure you have extras on hand. Hayeon-sik, Ms. Lee said, revealing the manager's name. Oh, okay, Hayeon-sik said, feeling surprised. She graduated from Shinwon All-Girls Middle and High School, then from Yunlim All-Girls University. After finishing university, she worked as a telemarketer for DM Card Company for a year. Ms. Lee continued. It was easier to gather information on her since it's an affiliate of your company. She had a good reputation too, especially for handling obnoxious customers. The reason listed for her resignation was personal issues, but apparently, the company didn't want to let her go because she was one of their top employees, Ms. Lee explained, showing Ji Sehun Hayeon's cell phone. She left this at the center yesterday. There was plenty of information in here. I let your lawyer, Mr. Chun, in on the situation. He said he'd take care of it, so you don't need to worry about a thing moving forward. To give you a brief rundown, we will ask for compensation for all physical and emotional damage that severely impacted your performance. If you want to, we can take it further, Ms. Lee told him calmly. Why do you think I'm looking for that girl? Ji Sehun asked Ms. Lee, his tone excited. Obviously, for payback? She replied. No, Ji Sehun said, snatching Hayeon's phone from her. I'm going to bring her here, he added, wearing a smirk. He scanned through the phone. She has many weaknesses. This is far too easy, he thought, scrolling through her messages and calendar. He saw streams of failed and planned interviews. I heard she hit your head? Ms. Lee asked. Yeah, Ji Sehun replied, still engrossed in the phone. He went silent, continuing to scroll. Ji Sehun, Ms. Lee called out, but he ignored her. Hey, she said, confused by his attitude. Ji Sehun turned towards her and suddenly placed the cell phone against her ear. Answer the phone, he demanded. Ms. Lee hesitated for a moment. Hello? She said as someone spoke on the other end. Are you the person who has my phone? The caller asked. Tell her to come get it, Ji Sehun instructed Ms. Lee, still holding the phone against her ear. Hello? Are you there? The caller asked, not hearing any response from her. Yes, I picked it up on the street. I didn't have time to look through your phone because I was busy, but I noticed there were a lot of missed calls from this number, Ms. Lee said. Oh, really? Thank you so much, the caller replied gratefully. Are you the owner of the phone? Ms. Lee asked. No, I'm her friend, Gina answered. So, how should I give you the phone? If you're in Seoul, I was thinking of meeting up with you, Ms. Lee suggested. Oh, thank you so much. My friend really needs to find her phone as soon as possible. She has a lot of calls she's waiting for. Are you free now? Jen asked. Yeah, where are you? Ms. Lee inquired, while Ji Sehun observed their conversation. I'm actually on my way somewhere at the moment. I'll give my friend a call. Can you tell me the location and time you'd be willing to meet up at? Gina asked her. Sure, I'll text you soon, Ms. Lee replied before ending the call. Couldn't you just show up with your lawyer? What's with the acting? Ms. Lee questioned Ji Sehun. It'll scare her, Ji Sehun explained. He then sent the location to Gina, stating that Cafe Eden would be the meeting place. As it should, you almost got hurt, Ms. Lee exclaimed, momentarily speechless. Wait, do you have a crush on this girl or something? Ms. Lee asked Ji Sehun, puzzled by his actions. Yes, Ji Sehun confessed warmly. Oh, I see, she responded softly. Wait, what did you say? Ms. Lee asked, eyes widening in surprise as she grasped his reply. Ji Sehun focused on his message, texting Gina the location and confirming the meeting time at 9 p.m. Give me the car keys, he told Hayeon, opening his palm towards him. You're going to drive? Let's go together. I'll drive you, Hayeon offered. Ji Sehun looked at him seriously. I mean, safety first. I'm going to pass out if you ever get hurt, you know that, right? Hayeon joked, handing over the car key. As Ji Sehun walked away, Miss Lee asked Hayeon, do you know anything about the girl? He replied, I've only seen her face. She seemed average compared to the other girls interested in Sehun before. She was extremely normal. To be honest, I don't see what he sees in her. Miss Lee pondered, maybe she has something he desires. We should gather more information on her. Ji Sehun gripped the steering wheel firmly as he drove through the city that night, his focus unyielding. Suddenly, something caught his eye. This must be it, he muttered as he drove past Cafe Eden, the designated meeting place. Parking the car, he headed inside. He sat in the chair, reading Gina's brief description of Hayeon on his phone. Ji Sehun scanned the cafe quickly, but didn't spot her. I don't see her, he thought, typing a number into his phone and saving it as a new contact. Resting his head and closing his eyes, Ji Sehun placed his phone on the table, waiting patiently for Hayeon. Behind him, two ladies couldn't contain their excitement upon seeing him. Hey, look at the window. He's so cute, one of them said, blushing. Where? Oh my. It should be illegal to be that hot. Marry me, the second lady added, also blushing, but was playfully told to shut up by her friend as they both laughed. Hayeon entered the cafe, catching Ji Sehun's attention as he opened his eyes, his mood visibly lifting. There she is, he said softly, watching her carefully. Hayeon paused at the entrance, surveying the cafe. Let's see. Someone who's here alone, she murmured to herself, her eyes landing on Ji Sehun. He fixed his gaze on her unmistakably. What is he doing here? She thought, feeling a twinge of fear. Hayeon turned almost immediately, heading for the door. Wait. Why should I run away? I didn't do anything wrong, she reasoned with herself. Yeah, it was self-defense, she reaffirmed, turning back and walking into the cafe. Hayeon's mind raced with uncertainty as she watched Ji Sehun walk towards her. But wait, why is he walking this way? Shoot, what should I do? Should I apologize? Her face flushed with embarrassment as he passed by her as if he didn't notice her presence. One iced black coffee, please, Ji Sehun ordered at the counter, momentarily diverting Hayeon's thoughts. Yes, we take card, the salesperson replied as Ji Sehun made the payment. Ah, that was close, Hayeon thought, still red with embarrassment as she turned to see Ji Sehun waiting at the counter. She walked over to an empty table in the cafe and sat down, her nerves building as she anticipated meeting the mysterious lady Gina had described. Why isn't she here already? Gina said she told her what I was wearing, Hayeon thought anxiously, tapping her fingers on the table. Suddenly, Ji Sehun spoke up, startling her. Drink up. Not now, when the bell rings obviously, he said, prompting her to look at him in shock. He pulled out a chair and sat down facing her, his presence now impossible to ignore. Why are you sitting down here? Hayeon asked him, her voice trembling slightly. This is my seat, Ji Sehun replied calmly. I never said you could join me. Also, I'm not here to have coffee, Hayeon retorted with a serious expression. Then why are you here? Ji Sehun questioned her. To find my phone, Hayeon stated firmly. Ji Sehun took out her phone from his pocket. Oh, you mean this? He said, showing it to her. Wait, that's my phone, Hayeon exclaimed, reaching across the table to grab it, but Ji Sehun quickly pulled it out of her reach. Why do you have my phone? Hayeon demanded. Does that matter? The important thing is that I'm here with it, Ji Sehun replied cryptically. I have something I want to discuss with you, so don't think about running away. Wait here, he added, pressing the table call button. After Hayeon's tea was served, she remained calm. You said you wanted to talk to me about something. What is it? Let's get it over with so I can get my phone back. I don't want to stay here any longer, Hayeon said nervously, fidgeting with her hands under the table. Fine. Tell me your price, Ji Sehun said with a slight smile, perplexing Hayeon instantly. I want to have you, but since you're not an object, you don't have a price tag, Ji Sehun said calmly, watching her reaction. Which is why I'm asking. How much do I need to give you to keep you by my side? Tell me how much a day of your time is worth. Whatever it is, I'll pay it. Or should I guess? He asked, but Hayeon remained silent, staring at him. Let's see, he continued. How much do people get paid at a 9-to-5 office job? I'll give you double that amount. How's that sound? He waited, but she still didn't respond, her expression unreadable. Triple? Ji Sehun proposed, but Hayeon stayed silent. You're pricey. 4 times the amount? He offered with a soft smile. Hayeon's face turned red as she looked down at the table. I can even give you 5 times the amount if you want. You're worth it, he told her, noticing the beads of sweat forming on her reddened face. You're sweating. I wonder, Ji Sehun said, leaning forward and holding her face gently. You make me curious. Fine, 6 times the amount. Just name your price. I can give you more, he insisted, not giving up. No thanks, Hayeon said, hitting his hand away and grabbing her phone. You basically stole my phone, so I don't think I need to thank you. Also, didn't you say you wanted to move on from yesterday's incident? This kind of conversation makes me extremely uncomfortable, she told him harshly. Was my offer too low? Ji Sehun asked. No, that's not the issue, Hayeon replied, standing up, her face still red. Then what is it? Ji Sehun inquired. You've been extremely rude to me from the beginning of our encounter today. Didn't I tell you that I'm older than you? Hayeon said, her face furious as she rested her hands on the table, her gaze piercing his eyes. Is that important? He asked, unfazed by her words. Ugh, never mind. Who cares at this point? It's not like I'm going to see you again, she said before walking away from him. Nuna, Ji Sehun called out, using the phrase younger males used to address an older female. Better? He asked, causing Hayeon to pause, her face reddening further as beads of sweat formed on her forehead. Thanks for the coffee, Hayeon said before leaving the cafe. Now alone, Ji Sehun tapped his finger gently on the table before grabbing hold of the coffee cup. Who said you'll never see me again? He murmured to himself. Hayeon walked slowly amidst the crowd as she headed home. Ugh, why do I keep sweating when I'm with that guy? She thought, wiping the sweat from her face. She checked her phone and saw a message from a company she had applied to. She didn't pass the second interview. Of course, it's okay. There are still a few more companies left, she told herself, trying to stay positive. She breathed a heavy sigh, feeling the weight of her disappointment mixed with the lingering unease from her encounter with Ji Sehun. How dare he ask me how much I am? Doesn't he know that's harassment? It's not my first time dealing with obnoxious human beings. Did he think I was going to react to crap like that? Hayeon thought angrily as she walked home. On the bus, Hayeon looked at her reflection against the glass before resting her head on it. Hey Mom, I'm on my way home, she said, calling her mother as she got closer to her apartment. Oh, the interview? You know, I didn't pass. I still have a chance, she added, trying to calm her mother. Mom, you know how hard it is to get a job nowadays. Ugh, there you go again comparing me to your friend's daughter. Yumi or Youngmi, was it? Who cares if they got accepted to a big company? What does that have to do with you? Her voice rose gently in anger. Ugh, whatever, I'm busy. I'm hanging up, she said, pushing the password to her apartment's door. I'm so sick of this, she muttered. Inside her room, Hayeon dropped tiredly onto the bed. Flashes of Ji Sehun's face ran through her mind. Maybe in my next life, I'll be as insane as him, she thought tiredly before drifting off to sleep. Unbeknownst to her, her phone rang while she lay in bed asleep. It was Ji Sehun. The next day, Ji Sehun walked into his room, dropping the groceries he had bought on the table before collapsing onto his bed to sleep. Sehun, wake up, Hyungsik said, knocking at his door before walking in. He uncovered the curtains, allowing sunlight to flood Ji Sehun's room. How is that the body of a cellist? How much does a cello weigh? He wondered, observing Ji Sehun's body as he lay in bed. We have a shoot at 3 p.m. today. It's 11 a.m. already. Did I wake you up too early? Hyungsik asked, leaning over as Ji Sehun reached for a bottle of water next to his bedside. Can you not talk like that? You're making me want to vomit, Ji Sehun told him, looking up at his face. Oh, I see. My bad. I didn't think it would make you sick. Here, have some water first, Hyungsik said, handing Ji Sehun the bottle of water. Ji Sehun gulped down the water. I couldn't sleep, he said to Hyungsik, handing him back the empty bottle. Huh? Hyungsik asked, looking confused. I couldn't sleep, Ji Sehun repeated. Yeah, I can tell. You have dark circles. I noticed your cello out in the living room, Hyungsik remarked. Did you practice all night? Maybe it's because you haven't performed in Korea for a long time, Hyungsik said, his hand against his chin as he pondered the probable cause of Ji Sehun's sleeplessness. I've been sleeping fine lately, Ji Sehun told him softly. Then, did something bad happen? Hyungsik asked. Something bad? Ji Sehun asked, giving him an awkward look. No, I mean something that might have bugged you. If you're too tired to wash up, just wash your face before we head out, Hyungsik suggested calmly, trying to ease the atmosphere. I'm not going, Ji Sehun said, turning away from him to resume his sleep. Sehun, his manager said sadly. There he goes again, he thought, crying inwardly as he watched Ji Sehun cover himself with the bedsheet. We had this shoot scheduled from a year ago, Hyungsik reminded him. I didn't have any sleep troubles then, Ji Sehun responded. Yes, you're right, you don't usually have a hard time sleeping. But you did this time. After this, you get to have a month off. I'll tell them to cut it as short as possible, Hyungsik pleaded, kneeling on the floor and pushing Ji Sehun slightly in a bid to get him up. Hyungsik? Ji Sehun called. Yeah? He replied. Do you like money? Ji Sehun asked. No, I love money, Hyungsik said with a cheerful look, blushing. What do you think of someone who doesn't like money? Ji Sehun asked, turning towards him. Who doesn't like money? Even children are crazy about money nowadays, Hyungsik replied. Ji Sehun remained silent before getting up. Then what's wrong with her? He thought as he walked towards his bathroom. So, you're going? Hyung-sik asked cheerfully. Oh yeah, how did it go with Hayeon yesterday? He asked, peeking from the bathroom door. Ji Sehun turned his head, not answering him. Never mind, wash up, Hyung-sik said, closing the door. After taking his bath, Ji Sehun picked up his phone and called Hayeon. She's ignoring my calls and texts, he thought, grasping his phone tightly in annoyance. Later at the photo shoot, Ji Sehun posed with his cello. Sehun, can you look this way? The photographer said, snapping more shots. Great job. Loving the eyes, he told Ji Sehun. We'll do 10 more shots then wrap it up. The photographer paused for a moment before resuming his shots. Yes, doing great, just like that. Just like that, he told Ji Sehun as he continued taking photos. And that's a wrap. Let's check the photos, he said as he finished the photo shoot. Ji Sehun didn't utter a word as he walked away, holding his cello. Sehun, come on over and check your photos. The photographer called, but Ji Sehun didn't respond and kept walking. Sehun? Mr. Ji? He called out again, but there was no response. Sorry about that, he's not feeling the best today, Miss Lee said to the photographer, wearing a smile. I'll go over the photos on his behalf, she added, standing beside the photographer as they went through the photos. In that case, we should hope he's in a bad mood every day. Apart from his good looks, the vibe he gives off is domineering. He would have become a big star in the modeling industry. Does he not have any interest in that field? The photographer asked the lady as they reviewed the photos. The people in the music industry would flip out, she said, laughing. Keep the interview under 5 minutes, Ji Sehun told Hyung-sik as he sat down, getting ready for his interview. What? It's going to take 30 minutes at least. There were 15 questions on the list, Hyung-sik replied, getting a little tense. Ji Sehun observed him with an awkward look as Hyung-sik couldn't help but feel nervous. Excuse me. I'll be giving Mr. Ji a slight touch-up, the makeup artist said as she approached Ji Sehun. Yep, thank you, Hyung-sik said, walking away from them. The makeup artist rubbed some makeup on Ji Sehun's face as he watched her. He reached out his hand, touching the lady's face. What was that? Is there something on my face? She stuttered, her face turning red. Ji Sehun felt the texture on his fingers. Unlike Hayeon, her skin felt damp and unpleasant. What could the difference be? Ji Sehun thought. He wiped his hand with a hand wipe. Mr. Ji, we'll start the interview, a lady said, seated and holding a recording device. I heard it's been 2 weeks since you came back to Korea from New York. During that time period, you successfully finished your solo concert in Korea. How do you feel about that? She asked him. Ji Sehun didn't pay any attention, lost in his thoughts of holding Hayeon's hand. Sehun? The reporter said, drawing his attention. Looking up, he saw Hayeon. Ji Sehun didn't utter a word as he kept looking at his hand. Mr. Ji? The supervisor asked, looking tense as he didn't answer her. Following his performance in New York, he returned to Korea with the same success. It's been a long time since he did a concert in Korea, so he probably enjoyed his time performing and meeting his fans, Ms. Lee told the interviewer. I see. Sehun started cello at a very young age, didn't he? She asked Ms. Lee. I heard that he first played the violin at the age of 4. Was there a reason why he changed to playing the cello? Or was there someone who influenced him to do so? She asked again. Sehun always had a talent for stringed instruments like the violin since he was very young. As for the cello, he was mesmerized by the sound, Ms. Lee replied. Ji Sehun kept quiet, not uttering a word. We're already halfway through the interview, yet we have not heard a single word from Sehun himself, the interviewer said, pointing her microphone at him. Before we continue with the interview, would it be okay to ask for a quick cello performance? She asked with a relaxed look. I'm not your personal radio, Ji Sehun said almost immediately, looking at her with a straight face. I'm sorry. I was just asking as a fan, she told him, looking tense. As a fan? He asked. Yes? She replied. Pass me the cello, Ji Sehun said, sticking out his hand, gesturing for his cello. Soon, he began playing in the presence of the interviewer. He played skillfully, but his facial expression did not match the music. The interviewer felt moved as the tone resonated with her. Ji Sehun soon stopped playing, ending her request. "How was that?" he asked calmly. It was great," she replied, stuttering, her face flushed. "No," Ji Sehun said, pushing his cello to the ground. It crashed loudly, breaking upon impact. "That performance just now was the worst performance I've ever played," he told her before walking away, promptly ending the interview. "Sehun," Ms. Lee called out as she ran to him. "Where are you going?" she asked, her face troubled. "As of today, I am no longer playing the cello," he told her firmly. "Let's go," he said, slipping his hand from hers as he walked out, slamming the door behind him. Outside the room, Ji Sehun tried calling Hayeon again, but she didn't answer his calls. She's not answering," he muttered to himself. Meanwhile, at the cafeteria where Hayeon worked, she attended to a customer. "You ordered 1 iced caramel macchiato and 1 iced black coffee, right?" she confirmed with the waiting customer. "Your total is 8,001. The bell will ring once your drinks are ready," she added with a smile, handing back his debit card. "Thank you," the customer replied. Just then, Ji Sehun stepped into the cafeteria. "Welcome, may I take your order?" Hayeon asked cheerfully, turning to see who the next customer was. "Why are you ignoring my calls?" Ji Sehun asked, his tone harsh. "What are you doing here?" Hayeon stuttered, looking tense. "I'm asking you, why are you ignoring my calls?" he demanded. "Because I'm working. Can you please move if you're not going to order?" "I have to take the orders of the customers behind you," she told him, trying to maintain her composure. "I'll order, answer me," he insisted. "When do you get off?" Ji Sehun asked. 11 p.m., she told him. "Give me whatever," he said, handing her his debit card before walking away. She held his card, unable to utter a word, as she watched him leave. Hayeon orders an iced black coffee for him. "Here's the coffee you ordered," she said, placing the drink and his card on his table. "You're supposed to pick it up yourself at the counter, you know that, right? Don't just leave your card with me and walk away," she told him, a hint of frustration in her voice. "That's for me to say. Don't ever walk away from me without my permission," Ji Sehun replied with authority. "What do you want from me?" "I told you, I have no more business left with you," she told him, her face reddening. "I do," he insisted. "What you're doing now is harassment, don't you know that?" she said, her tone serious. "You're the one who started this whole thing. I can't stop thinking about you. I left in the middle of an interview to come here. Do you know what a big deal that is? You ignored all my calls, which led me to wait in line just to talk to you," Ji Sehun expressed, leaving her speechless. "So, don't make such a big deal out by bringing me a cup of coffee. You have no idea how much I'm holding in," he tells her, his tone sounding harsh. "Hello? Can someone take my order?" a customer asked from the counter. "Go on," Ji Sehun told her, giving her permission to attend to the waiting customer. She walked away from Ji Sehun's table to attend to the customer, leaving him alone in the cafeteria. Later that night, Ji Sehun remained the only customer seated in the empty cafeteria. Is he really going to wait until I finish my shift? Hayeon wondered, trying not to meet his gaze. Ji Sehun watched her intently with a piercing stare. As she closed the cafeteria for the night, Hayeon struggled to reach and lock the gate. "Ugh, why is this up so high?" she muttered in frustration, stretching but unable to reach it. Ji Sehun stepped forward and reached out, locking the gate for her. "Better? Let's go now," he told her. Wer? Hayeon asked, looking both flushed and tense. "To your house," he replied. "My house? Why?" Hayeon asked, clearly confused by his suggestion. "Should we go to my house then?" Ji Sehun proposed. She remained quiet for a moment, unsure of how to respond. "We have to go somewhere. I'm not going to just stand around here," he insisted. "Fine, you said you had something to say to me, right? Follow me," Hayeon finally replied, turning to lead the way. They soon arrived at a traditional restaurant. "Hi ma'am, do you have an empty table?" Hayeon asked politely upon entering. "Yeah, inside," the waitress replied. "Thank you," Hayeon acknowledged before turning her attention to Ji Sehun. He stood behind her, trying to waft away the scent of the shop with his hand. She glanced at him sidelong, noticing his cold sigh. Ji Sehun followed Hayeon closely as they entered the restaurant. "Table for two?" the waitress asked as Hayeon sat down. "Yes, ma'am. We'll need 2 portions, thank you," Hayeon replied with a smile. Ji Sehun remained standing, hesitant to sit down. "Don't just stand there, come sit," Hayeon urged him. "Sit down," she said firmly, tapping her finger on the table. "If you don't like my demanding attitude, then you'd better fix your attitude too. Understand?" Her voice carried a cold edge. Ji Sehun calmly sat down, pulling the chair away from the table before settling next to Hayeon. "Why are you sitting here?" she asked, clearly tense. "Then where should I sit?" Ji Sehun asked calmly. "Across from me," Hayeon suggested, pointing to the other side of the table. "I'm more comfortable here," he replied. "Did you think about it?" Ji Sehun asked, changing the subject. "What's there to think about? Why do you think I ignored your calls?" Hayeon said, keeping her gaze fixed on the table. "You shouldn't have ignored my calls, it upsets me," Ji Sehun replied. "Why do you keep doing that? You keep blaming me for something personal. Should I do the same to you?" Hayeon retorted, folding her arms and sounding disgusted by his accusations. Ji Sehun watched her silently, taking in her words. "Because of you, I couldn't eat dinner, and you drained all my energy during my shift just by being there. I don't plan on staying with you longer than I have to, so if you have something to say it all now," she demanded, her voice harsh. "Do I bother you?" Ji Sehun asked, his gaze still fixed on her. "If you look at people that way, yes, obviously," she replied, sounding irritated. Suddenly, someone laughed loudly from a distance, causing both of them to be momentarily distracted. "Huh?" Hayeon said, unable to hear Ji Sehun's words clearly over the noise. He reached out and held her chair, leaning forward towards her ear. "I said, let's go somewhere quiet," he whispered to her. "What for?" "I can hear you loud and clear right here," Hayeon said, pushing him away from her ear with her hand. Her face turned red. "And don't just whisper in my ear like that without warning. It's rude," she added, covering her ear and turning her gaze away from him. Ji Sehun watched her quietly, noticing her discomfort. "Here's your order," the waitress said, dropping Hayeon's food on the table. "I haven't eaten all day, so you talk while I eat," she told Ji Sehun. "Thank you," she added to the waitress. Hayeon thought her food looked delicious as she eyed her orders on the table. Suddenly, Ji Sehun interrupted her thoughts. "Read this," he said, dropping a folded letter on the table. Hayeon took the letter and read it aloud. "Compensation for damages?" she asked, looking confused. "You know, for the damage you caused me? I spoke with my lawyer earlier, and the estimated amount seems to be pretty large," Ji Sehun explained. "If you accept my offer, I'll let it go and pretend it never happened," he told her calmly. "I'm also a victim in this too. Why are you suddenly bringing your lawyer into this?" Hayeon demanded, her voice tinged with frustration. "What are you a victim of exactly?" Ji Sehun asked, maintaining his calm demeanor. "You dragged me out and yelled at me without any evidence," she replied, her face turning red with indignation. "Isn't it true that you came into my waiting room without permission?" "You agreed and followed me," he countered. "You called me over and sexually harassed me by asking me how much I am, and even blackmailed me at my workplace," she accused, refusing to give in to his demands. "It was just a suggestion, not blackmail," Ji Sehun insisted. "Listen to what I'm saying," he urged calmly. In a fit of anger, Hayeon crumpled the paper, tearing it to pieces and throwing it into the dustbin. "Fine. I'll pay for the damages. Give me your lawyer's number," she told him firmly. "Don't you think it'll be easier to talk to me instead of a lawyer?" Ji Sehun asked her. "No. Talking to a lawyer would be 100 times better than talking to you," she replied harshly, her tone firm. "Do you even know how much you would have to pay for compensation?" Ji Sehun pressed. "I don't know, like hundreds of millions?" she guessed uncertainly. "Think bigger," he told her, leaning against the table and staring intently at her. "Shoot, and that was just me guessing," she thought, feeling tense under his gaze. "I'll talk to your lawyer first, and if it doesn't work out, I'll also prepare a lawsuit. Because like I said, I'm a victim in this too, she declared firmly. Why would you go through all of that? Ji Sehun asked, resting his face on his palm. That's how much I don't want to get involved with you, she replied, still facing him defiantly. I hate that I get nervous around you. Do you understand? I don't like the person I become around you. I hate getting all heated up, and most of all, I hate that I keep sweating around you. But for some reason when I'm with you, Hayeon started, but Ji Sehun interrupted her. That's what I like about you, he interjected. What? Hayeon asked, taken aback. You getting nervous when you're with me? I like it when you sweat around me, he confessed, still watching her intently. Why did you come looking for me today? Hayeon asked, her gaze fixed on him, her face flushing red. Why do you think I can't stop thinking about you? It's because I want you, Ji Sehun told her sincerely. Ji Sehun stretched his hand towards Hayeon's face, but she slapped it away. Are you insane? Are you going to keep talking all this nonsense? Hayeon snapped at him, but Ji Sehun held her hand gently. What doesn't make sense? He asked her. Huh? Hayeon exclaimed, feeling flustered. Isn't it a good thing anyway? Ji Sehun inquired. You may be used to approaching people like that to get what you want, but I'm not won over that easily, she told him firmly. I don't do this with just anyone, Ji Sehun assured her, his gaze scanning her face intently. What? Hayeon asked, not quite understanding his statement. I just like you, he confessed, leaning closer to her. Excuse me. Can we get another bottle of soju here? Hayeon called out, signaling to the waitress and quickly turning her gaze away from Ji Sehun. My answer hasn't changed. So stop with the nonsense and eat. If you're not in the mood to eat, you can just go ahead and leave. You know my number, pass it on to your lawyer, she told him, putting some food in her mouth. Actually, you'll call for yourself, won't you? Since you're the victim? She added sarcastically. Ha, Ji Sehun sighed, placing his hand against his face in frustration. You're making this very complicated, he told her. Hayeon watched him quietly, wondering why he had come all the way here for this conversation, especially with his busy schedule. She observed his reaction carefully. You really know how to get my attention, don't you? Ji Sehun asked her, still covering his face with his hand. But she paid him no mind, continuing to eat her food. The more she ate, the more Ji Sehun watched her quietly. What's this? He asked, observing her food. You've never heard of fried tripe? She asked him. What is it? Beef? He asked, uncertain about what she meant. Never mind. You're going to lose your mind if I tell you what it is, Hayeon told him, still eating. She took a glass of soju. Ha, she exclaimed as she sighed with relief, pouring herself another drink. Ji Sehun slid the glass towards himself and drank it in one gulp. You drink? Hayeon asked, surprised as she watched him. I thought you wanted me to, he replied. I meant try the tripe, not drink on an empty stomach, she clarified. You have your own glass, don't use mine, Hayeon exclaimed, snatching her cup back from him. It's not that good, Ji Sehun commented with a serious expression. Why is everything so difficult with you? He asked in frustration. You're at it again? I already told you I'll pay for the damages as the law states, she reiterated firmly. You sure love the law, don't you? He remarked, holding up another glass. I don't want to feel inferior, Hayeon replied. If you were an object, I could have made you mine in an instant, Ji Sehun said casually as he drank another glass of soju. Hayeon gave him a cold look before downing another glass. Too bad I'm a human being, she retorted, slamming the glass on the table. Ji Sehun smirked at her. Just because you're human doesn't mean I can't, he said, moving closer to her. Their eyes locked as she stared at him seriously. Excuse me. Another bottle of soju, please, Hayeon requested abruptly, trying to change the topic. Go home, she added, attempting to chase him away. Why would I go anywhere when you're right in front of me? He thought to himself with a satisfied look, observing her. Here you are, the waitress said, placing a bottle of soju on the table. Let's drink, Ji Sehun suggested, holding up his glass. Hayeon stared at him for a moment before opening the bottle. The two continued drinking, and soon they were both drunk. Ha, Hayeon sighed, holding her head and an empty glass. Ji Sehun sat silently, his hands folded and eyes closed, feeling the effects of the alcohol. Hayeon watched Ji Sehun silently as he remained unresponsive. Pfft, he's a lightweight, she muttered to herself. Hey, wake up, she said, shaking him gently. But he didn't respond. Hello? She tried again. Sehun? Hey, get up, she said louder, then resorted to slapping him lightly on the cheek, but still, he didn't react. Shoot, what do I do? Do I need to call a cab? I don't think he'll be able to get home on his own, she wondered aloud, holding her head in concern. She noticed his phone sticking out from his pocket. Excuse me, she thought, deciding to take his phone from his pocket. Let's see the most recent call in his list, she mumbled, scrolling through his contacts until she found assistant Lee Ji-yeon's name. Hayeon tapped on it and held the phone to her ear as it began to ring. Don't call, Ji Sehun suddenly said, snatching the phone from her hand. You're up, Hayeon said to him. I never slept, Ji Sehun replied, still feeling tired. His phone slipped from his hand, falling to the ground. Oh, Hayeon cried out, unable to catch the phone as it hit the ground hard. Ugh, she sighed as she bent down to pick up the phone. Here, she said, trying to reach for it. Ji Sehun slid his hand to her face, using his finger to touch her lip. Your lips feel just as nice as I expected, he told her, making her face instantly flush red. He continued to feel her lips as she stared at him. I want you, Ji Sehun told her with a smile. Ji Sehun touched her lips, and they both gazed at each other in silence. Why are your lips wet? He asked her. Hayeon watched him but didn't answer. Ji Sehun held her head firmly, drawing her face closer to his, and kissed her. Hayeon moaned softly before pulling away abruptly. What do you think you're doing? She asked, stuttering as she wiped her lips. Ji Sehun took her hand, murmuring something unintelligible. What? Hayeon asked, unsure of his intentions. He leaned forward again, gripping her arm, causing her to cry out. Ignoring her protests, he kissed her forcefully. Hayeon moaned softly as she held his arm. She moaned before pushing him away. In the struggle, Ji Sehun accidentally bit her lip, causing her to cry out in pain. Ah! She exclaimed, wiping her lips. You wait, she told him, trying to catch her breath. Ji Sehun fell on her, and she held him as he lay on top of her. Sehun? She called out, feeling tense. Hayeon, let's go to my place, he muttered, still holding her. He's still not getting up? The waitress asked, noticing them together. I'm really sorry, but can you please pass me that phone on the floor? Hayeon asked the waitress, still holding onto Ji Sehun. Oh no, it's cracked, the waitress said, picking up the phone. I'll just put it in this bag over here, she told Hayeon, placing Ji Sehun's phone in her bag. Thank you. Do you think you can call us a cab? Hayeon asked the waitress politely. Okay, to where? The waitress asked Hayeon. Sehun, where do you live? Hayeon asked him. Soon, they were in the cab, with loud music playing. Ji Sehun still laid his head on Hayeon's shoulder as the cab drove. The taxi driver had the music volume turned up high. Turn the music off, Ji Sehun said softly. Sir, I'm really sorry, but do you think you can lower the volume? Hayeon asked the taxi driver politely. Sure, the driver replied, lowering the music's volume. I'm apologizing an awful lot today, Hayeon said softly, turning her gaze to the window as they arrived at Ji Sehun's apartment. Ah! Hayeon exclaimed, stretching herself as she got out of the taxi. Ji Sehun remained still in the car, still drunk. Here we go, Hayeon muttered to herself, stretching a bit more. 1, 2, she counted, placing his arm over her shoulder and lifting him out of the taxi. She walked slowly, supporting him. Are you okay? She asked him softly, to which he replied with a faint no. They reached the building and Hayeon guided him gently to the elevator, which took them up to his apartment. Wow, Hayeon exclaimed upon seeing the apartment's aesthetics. People actually live in a place like this? She marveled as she scanned the surroundings. She carefully placed him on a sofa. Ha, she exhaled, slumping to the floor tiredly at Ji Sehun's feet. Ha, I'm exhausted, she murmured. Go drink some water, Ji Sehun said, rubbing her head gently. I think you need it more than I do, Hayeon replied, turning her face to Ji Sehun. Why did you drink so much when you're such a lightweight? She asked, looking at him with a questioning expression. But he just grinned, watching her silently. Wait, why does he look so normal, she thought, observing his facial expression. Miss Lee steps into the sitting room. Sehun, that's enough. Get up, she says with an ordering tone. Ha, he says with a disappointed tone before he gets up from his chair. Why did you suddenly go MIA after calling me? You scared me. I thought something was up, she asks him. What did you eat? This is an unfamiliar scent, she says, covering her nose as he strolls past her. Oh no, I am sorry. Did I interrupt you two at the wrong time? She says, facing Hayeon. Oh no, not at all, Hayeon tells her. If it was just the two of us, I may have gone along with the mood, Hayeon thought, arranging herself as she tucked in her shirt. I can't believe what's happened today, she thought. I must have been drunk, she concluded. I'll be on my way now, she told Miss Lee. It's late, spend the night, Ji Sehun requested. He must be insane, she thought inwardly. Oh right, your phone is in my bag, it's a bit cracked, she told him, removing his phone from her bag. But it was him who dropped it, not me. The only thing I did was pick it up for him, she said, almost crying as she passed the phone over to Miss Lee. That's okay. It's not his first time, Miss Lee told her with a charming smile. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Lee Ji-yeon, Sehun's personal assistant, she said, stretching her hand for a handshake. Nice to meet you, Hayeon told her, shaking her hand. Ji Sehun stood behind Miss Lee, observing them. I suggest you go wash up, Sehun, Miss Lee says to him. Later, he scoffed, but she insisted he do it now. He gets quiet before turning slowly and heading for the bathroom. Phew, Hayeon said, breathing a sigh of relief. I'm Kim, Hayeon said, about to introduce herself, but was cut off by Miss Lee, who tells her she already knew who she was. I know it's a bit late, but can we talk? She asked Hayeon, to which she said sure. I also have some things I want to discuss, Hayeon tells her. They soon get seated, facing each other. Miss Lee observes Hayeon for a while, causing her to feel a bit tense under her watchful gaze. Miss Hayeon, you're quite charming, she tells Hayeon, breaking the silence as she crossed her legs. Huh? Hayeon said. You look hot, so I turned the air on. You'll cool down soon, Miss Lee tells her. Do you want something to drink? She asks, rising from her seat. No, I'm fine. What was it that you wanted to talk to me about? Hayeon asked, turning down her offer. Seems like you've been drinking. Hold on a moment, Miss Lee tells her, walking away. She soon returns with a cup of water. Here, have this. It should be cold, she said, placing the cup on the table. Thank you, Hayeon tells her. Did you drink with Sehun? She inquired. Yeah, then one thing led to another, Hayeon tells her, holding the cup. Do you mind telling me what you ate and where? She inquired further. Fried tripe, Hayeon tells her. Fried tripe? Miss Lee asked, trying to hold back her laugh. But I'm the only one who ate, Hayeon tells her. Must have been noisy there, Miss Lee tells her. Does he not like noisy places? Hayeon inquired. He doesn't. He's actually very sensitive to sound. I'm sure you know why, she tells her. Yet, he's been going to a lot of noisy places lately. You're aware that it's mainly because of you, right? Miss Lee asked with a calm demeanor. Yeah, he mentioned something about compensation earlier during dinner, Hayeon tells her. Oh, about that, Miss Lee chimed in. What would I need to do for compensation? Hayeon asks. It's obvious if we take it to court, Miss Lee was saying before Hayeon cuts into her statement. Can you give me an estimated amount? She asked Miss Lee. Not sure. It could be millions, it depends on what he asks for. This is only if you want to take the legal route, she tells Hayeon. No matter how much he asks for, I'm willing to pay for the damage I caused, all the damage I did to his concert. I will pay for it. I won't avoid accountability, it was my fault. So it's only right that I take responsibility and set things straight, Hayeon said, her gaze cast to the floor, her demeanor turning sad. Miss Lee observed her silently. But I can't say that he's an innocent victim in this. I want him to take accountability for his rude behavior and the things he said to me, Hayeon said, facing Miss Lee, her voice sounding confident. Of course, Miss Lee tells her. And I don't want him to keep showing up unexpectedly anymore, she adds. Miss Hayeon, Miss Lee said, tapping her finger on the table. Why don't we have a more constructive conversation, shall we? A conversation where both parties are not affected negatively. You and I both. What do you say? Are you interested? Miss Lee asked calmly. What do you mean? Hayeon asked, sounding confused. We both have an issue with Sehun, don't we? Since I'm his assistant, if we take things the legal route, I'll have to get involved in everything. As for you, you'll be bothered by all the legal documents. You're already exhausted from job hunting, it'll only drain you even more. And the worst part for you would be the financial aspect, Miss Lee tells her. I'm being realistic here. This isn't something that would be easy to deal with for someone your age, she adds, fixing her gaze on Hayeon. So, what exactly are you trying to say? Hayeon asked, still not understanding her point. Do what Sehun wants, Miss Lee tells her, her face wearing a silent smile. Excuse me? Hayeon asked, looking surprised. However, we will need a contract to clearly distinguish who is superior in this relationship. Also, it wouldn't hurt to have a safety net. In the contract, you can include the things that are off limits. As for the cost, he has nothing but money, so ask for as much as you want. I'm giving you tips on how to negotiate with Sehun, Miss Lee tells her. Sorry, I'm not interested. I'm already tied up looking for a job. I can't waste another second getting involved with him, Hayeon said, turning her face away from Miss Lee, as she declined the offer. This can count as experience on your resume, Miss Lee tells her. Experience? Hayeon asked, confused. With his name on your resume, companies will look at you differently, she tells Hayeon. Hayeon fell silent, fidgeting with her fingers as she struggled to respond. It shouldn't be that difficult. I heard you specialized in managing difficult clients at your previous job, Miss Lee said, resting her face slightly on her hand. That was over the phone. I never had to deal with them face to face, Hayeon replied calmly. I can tell you're stubborn, considering you still want to take the legal route even after being informed of how much the compensation is. And I can tell you're mentally strong because you're sitting here with confidence, even after spending the day with Sehun, Miss Lee continued, causing Hayeon to blush. And you don't strike me as the type to tell anybody about this. I don't think you're a bad person. If you endure your time with Sehun, I can even recommend you to a good company. With that level of patience, you'd be welcomed anywhere, she assured her. Sehun is going back to Germany in a month. Either he'll be sick of you by then, or even if that isn't the case, the relationship won't last because he has to go to New York after Germany. He won't be back in Korea for almost 2 years, Miss Lee informed her calmly. Hayeon doesn't say a word. I understand what you're trying to say, she tells Miss Lee as she stands from her seat. As she makes her way to walk out on Miss Lee, she's informed that Sehun doesn't want to play the cello anymore because of her, causing her to pause. What? Hayeon asks, turning to look at her. Isn't it obvious? Cello was the only thing he knew before he met you. He even left in the middle of an interview to go see you. That's how much he's into you at the moment, Miss Lee tells her, remaining calm as she sits. You're lying, right? Hayeon tells her, not believing her words. It's true. What would I gain by lying to you, Miss Hayeon? She asks with a smile. I'm going to go now. I'm tired and I have to work tomorrow, Hayeon tells her. Okay, this is my number. You can call me if you have any questions, or even if you don't, feel free to call me anyway, she says, handing Hayeon her card. Thank you, Hayeon tells her. Do you want me to call you a cab? Miss Lee asks. No, thank you. I can take myself home, Hayeon tells her. You drank, didn't you? Miss Lee asks with a keen look. Yes, but I'm fine, Hayeon tells her, shaking her head slightly. Hayeon walks away from her, heading towards the door. She's quite prudent, Miss Lee says, wearing a smirk. Soon, Ji Sehun walks out from the bathroom, wearing his robe. Where's Hayeon? He asked Miss Lee, who was sitting and waiting for him. She goes mute for a while. She left? He asked. Miss Lee nodded, signaling yes. It's late. I've talked to her, so don't worry about it, she tells him, reassuring him. What do you mean? How? What did you say? He demanded, keeping a straight look. I have better social skills than you do. I'll make sure you find your motivation to want to play the cello again, so trust me and wait, she said rather rudely, her hands folded, unaffected by his demanding voice. You're confident? He says to her, dropping his towel on the floor. Yes, she replied calmly. Oh, really? I guess I can give you a day to take care of this. But that's it. Just one day. I don't care what you do. Whatever it takes, just bring her back here, he says. If she doesn't give me the answer I want to hear, you'll pay, he said, leaning towards her, causing her to become tense. Okay, Miss Lee tells him, with a smile. The next morning, Hayeon wakes up looking tired. I don't care whether he plays the cello or not. What does that have to do with me? She says, still looking tired as she sits on her bed. Ugh, whatever. I'd better wash up for work, she says as she makes her way slowly to the bathroom, dragging herself despite her tired look. As she takes her shower slowly, she wonders, is he serious about quitting cello? Even when I was sweating in front of him, he didn't seem to be bothered by it, she says softly, allowing the water to soothe her thoughts. She goes mute for a while. Whatever, I'd better get to work, she concludes, wrapping up her bath. At work, Hayeon looks around the cafe as she walks in, just in case Sehun was inside, but he wasn't. Relieved, she stands behind the counter with a big smile on her face, unaware that a big change is coming her way. Here's your order, she tells a customer excitedly. Enjoy, she says after serving him. Someone familiar steps into the cafeteria. Welcome, Hayeon says, turning to look at the customer. She says, sounding shocked. One iced black coffee, that'll be 3,501, Hayeon said to the customer. Iced black coffee, she thought, her mind briefly drifting back to Ji Sehun's earlier appearance at the cafeteria. Hello, hello. A customer called, jolting her back from her thoughts. Ah, yes? Sorry about that, she said, apologizing. The bell will vibrate once your order is ready, she told the customer as he walked back to his seat. Hi, welcome to, Hayeon started, welcoming an incoming customer, but she was surprised by who it was. Gina, she exclaimed, almost in shock at the sight of her friend in the cafeteria. Hey girl, how are you? Gina said with a smile. Where's your boyfriend? She inquired. He went to see his friend. I didn't feel like going home, so I decided to stop by to see you, Gina tells her. Good choice. What do you want to drink? Hayeon asked with a smile. I'll have an iced latte, Gina tells her. It's almost your break time, right? Let's grab dinner together, Gina suggested. Yeah, let's do that, Hayeon agreed. The ladies soon went to a restaurant to have dinner together. Did your manager say anything? Hayeon asked gently as Gina checked her phone. Nope, Sehun said he was fine. What are they going to say to that? She asked Hayeon. That's a relief, Hayeon tells her calmly. Is everything good with you? Gina asked. Hayeon responded, almost absent-minded. Of course, nothing's going on with me and Sehun, she said with a smile. Sehun? There's something going on between you two, isn't there? Gina asked with a serious look, pausing the phone she pressed. Hayeon sat down, looking stunned. I think I got myself into a tricky situation with that guy, she said with a sigh. We kissed, she tells Gina, causing her friend to drop her phone in shock. Wow, who would have imagined something like that would happen? Gina said, leaning in to catch the gist. I won't know for sure what's going to happen unless we actually go through the legal process though. I can't even tell my parents, Hayeon tells her with a sad and gentle tone. What do you mean by legal process? Gina inquired. What do you think? Do you think I can file a lawsuit against him? Hayeon asked casually. What? That's crazy, Gina said, slamming her hand against the table. Listen carefully. Your emotions seem to be getting ahead of you right now. You have to understand that your opponent is Ji Sehun, someone who has nothing but money, she tells Hayeon, sounding serious. Yeah, I know. That's why I'm worried, Hayeon tells her, sitting straight. All you have to do is be with him for a month and you're guaranteed a good job. Gina said, sounding harsh. She's not getting me a job. She just said she would put in a good word for me, Hayeon tells her casually. Are you stupid? Gina asks her, looking perplexed. Hey, no need for name-calling, Hayeon tells her, covering her ears. You've seen that guy. He's not normal. If he was, I wouldn't be reacting this way. You even said yourself that he was insane, and I agree with you. I can't have a normal conversation with him. He just does whatever he wants, she tells Gina. Get a grip and focus on reality. Are you in the position right now to handle all that? Gina tells her with a stern look, causing Hayeon to turn red, unable to say a word. No matter where you go, it'll be the same. There's this person who bullies you at work and they get transferred to another department. But that doesn't mean there's not going to be another jerk waiting for you. There's always going to be that someone who gets under your skin. Maybe even worse, Gina tells her. I know, Hayeon replies. Let's say you do get into a company. There's always going to be that one insane colleague. Besides, it's not like you've even found a job yet. It's just 1 month with Sehun and they guarantee a job recommendation. It also counts as experience. Yet you don't want to do it? If I were you, I would do it for a year. He even said he'd match your desired pay, didn't he? Gina asked, her voice sounding sharp. Yeah, that's true, but, Hayeon said calmly, sounding as if she was being scolded by Gina. I don't know anything about him. How could I spend 24 hours with him? It's not a few hours he's asking for. He's asking for 24 hours with him, she tells Gina calmly. So, how is that any different from when you handled difficult customers at your previous job? You just need to manage one person this time. If it's one person, it has to be easier. Also, you can write a contract. Include all the damage you've received in there. Gina tells her. Here's your order, the waiter said, placing their order on the table as Gina continued scolding Hayeon. On top of that, you can add the cost of stress you will be receiving from this in advance. Do you know how many people out there walk into their office every day enduring all sorts of harassment along with their difficult bosses? Gina demanded, holding her chopsticks, her face serious. You only leave once. When life gives you lemons, you need to make lemonade. They don't say that for nothing. Do you know why people buy a lottery ticket every week? Gina said, asking Hayeon. For luck, Hayeon said slowly. Exactly. He could end up being a lucky charm for you, Gina tells her. Didn't he say he wanted to stop playing the cello because of you? It really depends on how you look at the situation, she tells Hayeon. At Ji Sehun's apartment, he sat in his parlor observing the ticking clock. It was almost midnight. 1 minute left, he said softly, his gaze fixed on the clock. He leaned forward, resting his hands on his knees. I wonder what it is you want. Something you want so desperately that it hurts you inside. The void that you can't fill. I'll fill up that desire and make you realize your only choice depends on me, he thought as the second hand ticked loudly. You'll realize I'm the only one you can run to. It would be best if you came to me on your own, but even I know that is too much to ask for. Time is on my side anyway, he thought as the clock struck midnight. Ji Sehun stood up but stopped from walking away when he heard his doorknob being turned. It was Hayeon. She walked in with Miss Lee. You're here, he said, wearing a smile. Hayeon avoided eye contact with Ji Sehun. We were late since Miss Hayeon's shift ended at 11 p.m., and we had things to discuss for about 40 minutes, Miss Lee explained as Ji Sehun watched her silently. Hayeon and Ji Sehun sat facing each other. To start things off, Hayeon and I talked about the offer in depth, Miss Lee continued, placing her bag on the table as she took her seat. She wants to sign a contract with you under the condition that you will not file a lawsuit against her. What contract? He asked, his gaze fixed on Hayeon. These are the conditions she's proposing. I helped her with the contract. Go ahead and read it and let me know if there's anything you'd like to change, Miss Lee said, dropping a copy of the contract on Ji Sehun's table. He picked it up and read through it. Miss Lee opened her laptop as Hayeon watched Ji Sehun with a low gaze, still avoiding eye contact. Ji Sehun reads silently for a while. No physical contact? He asked, causing Hayeon to flinch. She mentioned you would say something about that. You two can talk it over and come to a compromise, Miss Lee told him. Why did you add this in here? He demanded, his gaze piercing Hayeon. This is a business relationship. I don't want us to act like a couple, she told him calmly, not looking at him. What does that even mean? He asked her. I don't want us to do things a couple would do, Hayeon replied, looking a bit tense. Ji Sehun observed her silently. Like kissing, she said, closing her eyes as her face turned red. I have no excuse for what happened yesterday because I too was drunk, but moving forward, I want both of us to be careful, she told him calmly. I thought you were going to stay with me for the whole day, Ji Sehun asked, looking unimpressed. Well, our lips don't have to touch. We're just two people residing in one place, Hayeon explained, her face blushing. I will also need my own space. I know I can't help feeling uncomfortable, but I don't want you crossing any boundaries. I don't want to repeat what happened yesterday, she added. Ji Sehun remained silent, observing her face closely. You have a scab on your lip, Ji Sehun said, observing the injury. Yes, I do. Because someone bit me like a dog, Hayeon replied boldly, reminding him of their incident from the night before. Put some ointment on it, he told her, feeling remorseful. Don't worry about it, Hayeon responded. You'll have to be careful. You don't want it to scar, he advised, his hand resting against the chair as he sat relaxed. What about everything apart from kissing? He asked her, wearing a smile. Everything else as well, she told him. Everything? He repeated. I don't want you to be too touchy with me, she clarified. Okay, I won't be too touchy, he promised her. By my standards, not yours, Hayeon clarified. Okay, fine, your standards. As long as there's no affection, there's no issue, right? Ji Sehun asked, continuing his reading. You're only allowed to touch my hands and my face. That's more than enough, isn't it? She told him. Then how am I supposed to know what your boundaries are exactly? Doesn't it depend on your mood? Ji Sehun asked with a smile. Just don't do anything I say no to, Hayeon replied. I'll think about it, Ji Sehun said nonchalantly. Forget about this whole thing, she told him, rising from her seat. She walked away from him, but he said, I'll think about it in your favor, this time sounding more serious. She paused, turning her gaze towards him before returning to her seat. Miss Lee wanted to say something but chose not to, covering her mouth as though she found the negotiations amusing and was startled by Ji Sehun's behavior. He resumed reading the contract calmly. I don't want you to interfere with my free time, and you need to respect my private life as well, Hayeon told him. I've concluded that the down payment is 10 million won. If either of you violates the contract, you'll have to pay 10 times the down payment, so both of you should be careful. Miss Hayeon, you agree to the conditions, right? Miss Lee asked her. Yes, she said boldly. Nothing here I disagree with, Ji Sehun said, dropping the contract on the table. Miss Hayeon wants to be paid weekly. 4 million won a week, Miss Lee added. Why 4 million won? Ji Sehun asked, his gaze still fixed on Hayeon. Because of all the damage you caused, mental stress included. It includes the cost of the stress you will be giving me while we go through the deal, Hayeon replied boldly, meeting his gaze. He didn't say a word. You might think it isn't a big deal for you, but as a woman, there's a lot to think about living with a stranger. This is more mentally draining than having a normal office job, she explained calmly. Did you come up with the amount? Ji Sehun asked her. Yes, she replied, feeling a bit tense. 4 million won, he repeated, holding his head as he thought about her demand. Throw away your conscience, I'll buy it. Raise it to 20 million a week, he said cheerfully to Miss Lee. Okay, she said, typing it on her laptop. I don't want to feel like I'm buying something cheap. I will treat you the best I can, Ji Sehun said, resting his hand on the table, wearing a cheerful look. No, you don't have to do that. It's not like I'm an expert in this field. I don't have any experience as a manager, Hayeon told him, her gaze turning to Miss Lee, her facial expression tense. I never said you would have to work, Ji Sehun replied. She went mute. I'll work as much as I get paid, she said, her gaze turning to the table. Everything has been edited in the contract. Is there anything else you two want to negotiate before we finalize the deal? Miss Lee asked them both. I'm good, Ji Sehun said. Me too, Hayeon added. Wait right here. I'll be back with the printed contract, Miss Lee told them as she walked away. Now alone, Hayeon stared at Ji Sehun quietly. They both didn't say a word. Why are you being so polite all of a sudden? He asked her. It's work. I can't treat you the way I did before, she replied. You're being too formal. Is it because I'm not paying you enough? He asked, unsure. No, it's more than enough, she told him, closing her eyes. Then talk to me comfortably, he told her. Can you just leave me be? Hayeon asked. I don't like it when people I work with are too formal with me, Ji Sehun said. Oh, really? She asked, looking perplexed. Yes. As you can tell, both my manager and my assistant speak to me as if we're friends and vice versa. Okay, fine, Hayeon said calmly. Now do you feel respected? He asked her with a smile, feeling relaxed. You have one job, and one job only. Keep an eye on my mood, he added with a stern look. Miss Lee soon returned. Here is the printed contract. Go ahead and double-check it, she said, distributing a copy of the contract to each of them. We wired the down payment to your bank account. Can you check? Miss Lee asked Hayeon. Okay, one moment, Hayeon said, bringing out her phone. She checked the amount received in her account. Is it the correct amount? Miss Lee asked her. Yes, Hayeon replied. Did both parties read the contract? Miss Lee asked them. Both parties will stamp their fingerprints here, she said, offering them ink and showing them where to stamp with their fingers. The contract lasts until Sehun leaves for Germany, which is in a month, Miss Lee added. Hayeon pressed her thumb on the paper, signing hers. No objections to that, right? Miss Lee asked. No problem, Ji Sehun replied. Miss Lee watched him quietly for a short while, thinking, he can't even keep a relationship, how will he be able to deal with her for a week? It's only a matter of time before he gets sick of her while they live together, she concluded in her thoughts. I think it would be helpful if Miss Hayeon is aware of Sehun's schedule. I'll share it with you once something comes up. Thanks for both of your time. I think we can wrap it up now. It's getting late, Miss Lee told them as she arranged the signed contract, packing her papers to go. It's all set, now I just need to bear this for 1 month, Hayeon thought inwardly. Is it okay if I drop you off this time, instead of calling you a cab, Miss Hayeon? Miss Lee asked. Oh sure, thank you, Hayeon replied excitedly, getting up from her seat. Where do you think you're going? Ji Sehun asked her, causing her to pause. I'm going home. I'll come back tomorrow morning, she replied. Why? He asked, his voice sounding harsh. What do you mean? I have to pack my things, don't I? Hayeon responded. You can wear my clothes, he suggested. No way, she said, turning red. Check the date on the contract, he told her. He's right, the start date is today, Miss Lee added, sounding a bit tense. Do I have to wait for you again? He asked her. Hayeon stared at him, unable to answer. Give her a break, she must be uncomfortable, Miss Lee interjected. Why should I? Ji Sehun asked, sounding rude. Jiyoung? Hayeon said, referring to Miss Lee. You can leave now, Ji Sehun told Miss Lee. Sorry, if that's what the contract says. We need to follow it, Miss Lee said to Hayeon before walking to the door. She headed to the elevator, with Ji Sehun following her. Good work today, he told her as she pressed the button for the elevator. I'll send Hyungsik over tomorrow in time for your practice, Miss Lee said with a smile. No need, I can drive myself, Ji Sehun replied. Miss Lee stepped into the elevator. For the time being, don't drop by without messaging me first, he said before the door closed. Back in the sitting room, Hayeon stood, looking at Ji Sehun. So, what should we do? He asked, looking calm. I need to go get a change of clothes, she said, looking a bit tense. Don't go, he requested. Are you insane? She asked him. No, I'm completely sane, he replied with a faint smile. Oh, you said the contract starts now, right? That means I have 3 hours of free time. I'll take that now, she said with a happy look. Now? He asked, his expression turning sad. Yeah, I'll be back after I get my clothes, she said, walking past him. "Doing as you please already, I see," he said rather rudely. "Don't talk to me like that. I am guaranteed 3 hours of free time, and you can't interfere with that." "It's in the contract," she told him calmly. "Fine," he said with a sinister gaze. Hayeon sighed with relief and turned to continue her walk. "I'm looking forward to what the future holds for us," he said, still facing away from her as she left his apartment. Hayeon came out of her room, opening the door to the sitting room gently, trying not to make a noise. It was already the second day since she started living with Ji Sehun. She tiptoed into the room, still adjusting to her new surroundings. "I'm still not used to this place," she thought. She switched on a lamp by accident. This must be automatic too, she thought, noticing the closed curtains. Hayeon grabbed some remotes she could find in the room and pressed them one by one, frustrated as they didn't seem to work. "How do you get this thing to work?" she asked softly, feeling exasperated. She walked over to the curtains, trying to open them manually. "Nor am I used to this man," she thought. Suddenly, Ji Sehun appeared from behind the curtain, causing Hayeon to tremble and shout in shock. "Why would you sneak up on me like that? You scared me," she said. Without answering her, he walked past her to a table and pressed a button. The curtains opened automatically, revealing the sunlight. "Oh," Hayeon exclaimed as she saw it worked. "Oh right, good morning," she said. Ji Sehun sat down calmly, not wearing a shirt. He didn't reply to her. Hayeon turned her head away, her face turning red. She glanced back towards him, not uttering a word, standing and staring as his eyes remained closed. "What?" he asked, opening one of his eyes to look at her. "What do you mean?" she replied, flustered. "You're going to be in that state quite often, aren't you? I'm trying to get used to it. Why don't you change out of those clothes too? How long are you planning to keep wearing that?" he asked with a smile. "My pajamas are in the wash," she replied calmly, but he just made a dismissive sound. "Did you sleep well?" she asked him with a smile. "Me?" he asked, unsure. "Yeah, you look tired, like you didn't get enough sleep when we were having dinner," Hayeon said. "Maybe I'm wrong," she added, observing his silence. "I slept well last night," he told her. "I see," Hayeon said. "It's a good thing, isn't it?" Ji Sehun asked, stepping closer towards her. "Huh? Yeah, it is," she confirmed. "Thanks to someone," he said, a smile on his face. Hayeon didn't understand who he was referring to. "I'm referring to you," he said with a smile. Hayeon turned red. "It's really hot today, isn't it? I'm going to go hop in the shower," she said, dashing away from him. Ji Sehun watched her, holding his hand back. Soon, it was Ji Sehun's practice time. He played melodiously as the three of them watched. Hyungsik's face looked red. Miss Lee closed her eyes, enjoying the tune. Ji Sehun sank into his play, closing his eyes and feeling every tone he struck. Hayeon watched, her face flushed. "That was perfect, wouldn't you all agree?" Ji Sehun asked, ending his practice. "Yeah, that was amazing," Hyungsik said, clapping in amazement. Hayeon clapped slightly. "I didn't know it was possible to make such a sound with detached bowing. That was better than his performance from a few days ago, wasn't it?" Hyungsik whispered to Miss Lee. "I agree. The fade-out was extraordinary." "This is all thanks to you, Hayeon," Miss Lee said. "Yeah, Hayeon said, sounding surprised. "You had to affect his mood in some way. Him showing up for rehearsal is a big deal in the first place," Miss Lee told her with a faint smile. "All I've done so far was spend the whole day with the guy," Hayeon thought, looking perplexed. She laughed lightly as Ji Sehun resumed his practice. "Take it all in. You won't be able to see such a performance anywhere else," Miss Lee said to Hayeon as they watched. Hayeon didn't respond. "It's impressive how he can make such heavy and resonant sounds with just one instrument," she thought, letting out a yawn. "But listening to it for 2 hours is making me a bit sleepy." Ji Sehun stopped playing and paused, his gaze fixed on her without saying a word. Hayeon flinched. "Oh," she exclaimed softly. "How was it?" he asked, with a serious gaze. She asked, unsure if she heard him correctly. "How was my performance?" Ji Sehun asked again. "It was impressive and so deep," she told him. "What did I just play?" he asked. Hayeon went mute. I'm sorry, but I don't know much about classical music, she admitted calmly. Tell me what you felt, he insisted. She said, trying to find the right words. Hyungsik and Miss Lee watched tensely, both gulping as they kept their eyes wide open, observing her reaction. It was nice, not bad, Hayeon said with a smile. Hyungsik and Miss Lee watched her in horror. Something inside me was thumping, Hayeon told him. Tell me again, thumping? Ji Sehun asked. Like Badum, Hayeon said, describing her heartbeat. Hayeon, sure, Miss Lee said, placing a finger against her lips, signaling her to keep quiet. You know the feeling when a 5-ton truck hits you? You fall to the floor, get up, and feel your entire body tingling? That's what it felt like, she explained. Ji Sehun said, feeling confused. It's not a bad feeling. I actually really like it. That's just how I felt listening to it. Then what type of music are you into? Ji Sehun asked calmly. Pop. I'm into pop, she replied. Like what? Let me hear it, Ji Sehun said, causing her to go mute. She took out her phone and played a song for him to hear. He listened gently. This is the type of music I listen to, she said. Ji Sehun sat down gently, listening to the song some more. He stroked his cello strings and began playing along to the tone of the music. Whoa, oh my, Hayeon exclaimed, her face turning red. You can play it without the sheet music? How? She asked excitedly, walking towards him. Ji Sehun didn't reply, continuing to play. You have perfect pitch? Is that what it is? She asked, delighted. Ji Sehun stopped playing and watched Hayeon calmly. If I show you the sheet music, can you play it more accurately? I want to hear it without the background music. There's this one song that I listen to whenever I'm feeling down. Can you play that for me? Hayeon asked, squatting down. Hayeon, Miss Lee exclaimed, trying to calm her. Sehun, you must be really good for her to be requesting songs to play. Right, Hayeon? Hyungsik asked with a smile as they both approached her. Oh, sorry, I'm interrupting your practice, aren't I? You don't have to play for me, continue with your practice, Hayeon said sadly. No, I'll play for you, Ji Sehun said, stunning Hyungsik and Miss Lee. Show me, he demanded. Hayeon held up the sheet music while still kneeling down. Hold it up higher, Ji Sehun told her. He read the music as he began playing. The tone captivated Hayeon, causing her heartbeat to race faster. Scroll down, he instructed as he approached the end of the screen. She scrolled down gently while he continued playing. Hayeon remained mute, her face flushed. Better? He asked after finishing. Yeah, thank you. There's one more song that I really like. Do you think you can play that for me too? She asked politely. This one might be a bit difficult, Hayeon said, scrolling through her phone library. Ji Sehun stretched out his hand and gently caressed her hair. Hayeon was about to explain how challenging the song might be for him when Ji Sehun suddenly drew her head towards him and planted a kiss on her forehead. Nothing is too difficult. I'll play it for you. Was that also too much? He asked gently. No, she stuttered, her face turning red. What's going on? Hyungsik said, looking shocked. It's this song, Hayeon said, showing Ji Sehun the music sheet. Miss Lee stood shocked and was mute. I don't know, looks like she really knows how to work him, Miss Lee said calmly, watching them. After the rehearsal, Miss Lee showed Ji Sehun a disc. This is the video we took of you performing at the concert in New York. You should take a look at it first, she told him. He took the disc from her and then turned towards Hayeon. Do you want to watch it with me tonight? He asked. If you're going to be with me, you need to know the basics, he tells her. Yeah, you're right. Let's watch it together, Hayeon agrees, placing the disc into her bag. Even though it's just a month, I should at least know the basics of his music, she thought. It's 2 hours long, he informs her. Okay, but promise me we'll go to bed right after watching it, she says with a straight look. I'll decide, he replies. If you have any conscience, shouldn't you let me sleep early tonight? After everything I did for you last night, I'm tired too, you know, Hayeon says, sounding harsh. What happened last night? Miss Lee, who had been listening, asked as she poked her nose into their conversation, causing Hayeon to flinch. Oh well, I had to stay up late with him because he couldn't sleep, Hayeon explains, looking tense. Artists tend to be more active late at night when it's relatively quiet. I hope you understand, Miss Lee tells her. Your practice is over. Where are you headed now? She asks Ji Sehun as he adjusts his sleeves. Home, he replies. And you, Hayeon? Miss Lee asks, turning towards her. Home as well, Hayeon responds. I want to use my free time now. Will that be okay? She asks Ji Sehun calmly. Ji Sehun gives her a stern look. It's 3 p.m. now, so I'll meet you again at 6, Hayeon tells him. 6 p.m.? Ji Sehun asks, sounding shocked. Yeah, I'm allowed to use 3 hours, aren't I? She replies. Where are you going? Ji Sehun asks. I told you, home. To my apartment, she explains. Ji Sehun puts on his suit properly, adjusting it. Let's go, he says. What are you talking about? You're not included in my free time, she tells him, looking tense. Who says? He asked her. Who wants to spend their free time with their boss? Seems like you don't understand what it means to respect my private time, which is clearly stated in the contract, so let me make things clear for you. Don't interfere with my free time. I won't even check your messages or calls during that time, she says harshly. How do you plan to get home? Hyungsik asks Hayeon. I'm going to take the bus, she replies. Oh, no need. I'll drive you, Hyungsik offers. Oh, really? I'd appreciate that, Hayeon says, grateful for his kind gesture. No, you can't, Ji Sehun demands. You go, he tells Miss Lee. It'll take about 30 minutes. Miss Hayeon, let's go, Miss Lee tells her after checking her watch. Okay, thank you, Hayeon replies, following Miss Lee. She pauses her walk, turning back to Ji Sehun. Thank you for the performance earlier. If you don't have anything going on when I get back, let's have dinner together. You barely ate this morning, she tells him, offering her hand for a handshake. Ji Sehun watches her quietly before shaking her hand. Look at you, acting all cute, he says. It's just me compensating for the performance, and you look kind of mad that I'm leaving, she tells him with a tense look. You're right, I am. So please stay like this for another 5 minutes, he tells her. Hayeon quickly retracts her hand, her face turning red. I'll see you later. Bye, she says before walking away quickly. Sehun, you said you're heading home, right? I'll drive you. Let's go, Hyungsik says, but Ji Sehun pays her no attention, focusing instead on his hand, holding it close to him. At home, Ji Sehun lay in his chair, lifting the hand he had held Hayeon with. He observed it gently, lost in thought. The time was almost 6 p.m. when the door to his private elevator opened, and Hayeon stepped in. Ji Sehun got up from his chair and fixed his gaze on her. Why the long face? I'm on time, I'm even 5 minutes early, she explained as she held her box. Why didn't you answer my calls? He demanded, his expression serious. He suspected she had spent her time fully, enjoying her break. Huh? I already told you I wasn't going to be answering your calls during my free time. It's even in the contract. Don't you think we should be professional about this? She replied. Ji Sehun thought to himself that her scent was fading. Go take a shower, he said firmly. I'll do that when I feel like it, she responded. That's the first thing you'll do when you arrive home. Don't make me tell you again, Ji Sehun said, scolding her. Hayeon watched him with a stern look before heading to the bathroom. Am I that dirty to him? What's with his obsession with showers? I thought he was into sweat, she wondered, drying herself after showering. She soon came to the parlor and could hear the sounds of plates. Is someone here? She asked Ji Sehun. The chef, he told her. I'd better greet her, Hayeon said, walking toward the kitchen. Come, Ji Sehun demanded, still sounding authoritative. As Hayeon approached the kitchen, she offered to help the chef set the table. Let me help you set the table, she said, trying to be helpful. Really, it's okay, the chef replied, but Hayeon insisted politely, offering to take some plates to the table. Oh, really? How nice of you. Where did someone like you come from? The chef asked, genuinely surprised. Ji Sehun stood still at the entrance, observing the interaction with a thoughtful expression. Inside he mused, "Whatever it takes, I want to make you mine. How can I keep her to myself? I want that face to look only at me. I want her to be so focused on me that she can't do anything else," he thought. Ji Sehun remained seated, watching Hayeon work with the chef. As they finished, Hayeon let out a sigh and joined him for dinner. "I'm here now," she told him. She showed me around the kitchen. "When I have free time, I'll cook your meals," she tells him. "You don't have to. You just need to focus on me," Ji Sehun replied. "I am," Hayeon said, but the chef interrupted them. "I hope you enjoy your dinner," the lady said with a smile. "Come join us," Hayeon offered, getting up to offer her a seat. "No, I have to get home and make dinner for my family too." "I'll be on my way then," the lady replied politely. "Let me walk you out," Hayeon said, moving toward the door. Ji Sehun stopped her by grabbing her hand. "Sit," he instructed with a firm tone. Hayeon looked at him, her emotions mixed. "I really didn't want to mention it, but you should show some respect to the people who take care of you. I think you forget the most important part of the contract." "I'm the employer here," Ji Sehun responded calmly. "As an employee, you need to be mindful of what you say." "Fine, I'll be careful," Hayeon said before returning to her seat. After dinner, Ji Sehun prepared to watch the video, settling into his chair. "I'm already exhausted from my trip back home. Let's hurry up and finish this and head to bed," Hayeon said, holding the disc as she walked into the parlor. "How do I play this?" she asked Ji Sehun. "Give it to me," he replied. "Here," she said, handing the disc over to him. As Ji Sehun stretched his hand to take the disc from her, a memory of their kiss flashed through her mind. "Wait, what's wrong with me?" Hayeon thought, her face turning red. She looked away, trying to hide her flushed face. Ji Sehun took the disc from her and began preparing the setup. Once everything was ready, he switched off the lights. "Why did you turn the lights off?" Hayeon asked. "You can see better with the lights off," he explained. He glanced at her. "Come sit next to me," he offered. "What, why?" Hayeon demanded. "So you have a better view," Ji Sehun said. "That's okay, I can see fine from here," Hayeon replied, her face still red. Ji Sehun said nothing more and switched on the television. The concert began to play on the screen. Ji Sehun walked into the orchestra, and the crowd started clapping. Hayeon's focus was fixed on the TV. She didn't notice when Ji Sehun stood up and slid into the seat next to her. "Why are you sitting here?" she asked suddenly. "To check out the view from here," he said, his gaze fixed on the screen. "He's talking about the view of the TV, right?" Hayeon thought. Ji Sehun gently slid his hand to the back of the sofa, stretching it toward Hayeon's back. "Is that you?" Hayeon asked, spotting him on the TV. "Who else would it be?" he replied. The conductor signaled the orchestra to begin. "What's the name of that song?" Hayeon asked. "Cello Concerto in B minor, Op. 104 by Dvorak," he told her. Hayeon looked puzzled, not familiar with the name. "How come you're not playing along with the other cellists?" she asked, noticing he wasn't playing yet. Ji Sehun didn't answer. "Oh, you're playing now," she said as he began his performance. "Wow," she exclaimed. The melody shifted from strong to delicate. His hands, it's like he's caressing his lover, as if he's whispering love to her, Hayeon thought, mesmerized by his playing. "You smell like me," Ji Sehun whispered, leaning closer to her and inhaling her scent. "Huh?" Hayeon said, turning her gaze to him. "What are you doing?" she asked, suddenly moving away. "What?" Ji Sehun asked, looking at her with a childlike expression. "Well, I use your things, so it's inevitable," she said. "I like it." "That's what I like about you," he replied calmly. "Anyway, that must require a lot of energy. Don't you sweat while performing like that?" Hayeon asked, resuming her focus on the performance, now ignoring his presence next to her. "What are you going to do if I say I do? Wipe the sweat for me?" he teased. No, I can't even ask you a question," she said, feeling shy. "What are you good at?" Ji Sehun asked her. "Like an instrument?" she responded, watching his gaze. Ji Sehun nodded. "The recorder," she said, turning her face away, trying to hide her embarrassment. Ji Sehun almost laughed. Hey, don't judge me. I have to use all 10 fingers just like you do. I even got an A on it at school, she said, showing him her fingers. And what else? Ji Sehun asked, resting his chin on his hand, interested. I played up to Cherny 100 no. 1. I have experience too, you know, she told him. Cherny 100 cute, Ji Sehun said with a smile. Play the piano for me next time, Ji Sehun told her. I can already tell he's going to laugh at me the whole time, she thought, frowning at herself. I'll play the cello next to you, he added, sliding his elbow towards her. Hayeon remained silent, watching him calmly. You can go inside and sleep if you're tired, he said. No, I'm going to watch until the end, she replied. Ji Sehun sat back straight, watching the concert with her. As the concert ended, Ji Sehun reflected inwardly, that was when I was able to solely focus on my music. He turned to look at Hayeon and found her fast asleep. With a faint smile, he switched off the TV and gently lifted her from the sofa. I thought this would wake her, he murmured, observing her sleeping in his arms. He carried her carefully to the room. The next morning, Hayeon slept peacefully. Ji Sehun adjusted the bedsheet, covering her properly. As she woke up, she mumbled, "Where am I? Oh right, this isn't my house." Ji Sehun's breath on her neck caused her eyes to widen in shock. Hayeon hurriedly uncovered herself and jumped up from the bed, her hand resting on Ji Sehun's bare chest. Hayeon realized she was in his room. She stammered in disbelief as she fell off the bed, her gaze fixed in shock. What are you doing? Ji Sehun asked, still lying bare-chested. Did we? She hesitated, unable to find the right words. Did we what? Ji Sehun asked her calmly. Did we do it? She finally whispered. No, Ji Sehun replied calmly. I just wanted to watch you sleep. You didn't even wake up once. Can you get me some water? He requested kindly. You wait right here, Hayeon said, trembling slightly as she scrambled off the floor and rushed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. Ji Sehun stood up gently from the bed and walked towards his table. He took a bottle of water and gulped down some of it, reflecting on the morning's events. Hayeon slammed open the door. What's this? She demanded, showing him a red mark on her arm. Ji Sehun looked at her, puzzled. What is it? Take a closer look. You're the one who gave it to me, she insisted. Ji Sehun examined the mark, still unsure of her claims. What's with that face? This is solid evidence, yet you still deny it? Hayeon said, her frustration evident. Come closer, Ji Sehun said, reaching for her hand. Hayeon, looking furious, allowed him to hold her hand. He gently brought it to his mouth and placed his mouth on her hand. Ah, Hayeon said, almost crying from the unexpected gesture. Ji Sehun released her hand and said, Look, compare the two. He showed her the scar he had made with his mouth, proving it wasn't his mark on her skin. Hayeon snatched her hand back, her face flushed. She dashed out of the room, her heart racing. What was that just now? She murmured, placing her hand against her heart. Outside the room, she examined the mark more closely. This is just a mosquito bite. What do I do now? She said, feeling embarrassed and distressed as she sank to the floor. Hi, Hayeon, Miss Lee greeted as she approached her and Ji Sehun. Oh my, aren't you hot? Did you catch a cold? Your shirt looks a bit thick, Miss Lee exclaimed, noticing Hayeon's attire. Oh no. I just have a bit of a cold, that's all. I'm trying to keep it from getting worse, Hayeon explained, wearing long-sleeved sweats to conceal the marks on her arm. I hope you feel better soon, Miss Lee said with concern. Hayeon thanked her for her kindness. Hey, Sehun. Do you have all the contacts from your old phone? Instructor King's wife was wondering why she couldn't get a hold of you. She called me yesterday, Miss Lee said, turning to Ji Sehun. That old woman is still alive? Ji Sehun asked, sounding surprised. It's Sehun's cello instructor from when he was a child, Hyangsik whispered to Hayeon. Oh really? She exclaimed. Yes, but they want to see you, Sehun. You know he doesn't have long left. You can't keep avoiding him. You have to visit them at least once, Miss Lee told him. As Ji Sehun listened, he held Hayeon's hand tightly, causing her face to turn red. What's wrong with me? What's gotten into me? Hayeon thought, glancing at him from the side. Her phone rang, and she saw a message from her mom. Her heart sank as she read the scolding message about her messy room. I didn't have time to clean because I was in such a rush, even my contract, Hayeon thought, her eyes widening as she realized the contract was in her room. Let go of my hand. Now, let go. Hayeon demanded harshly, pulling away from Ji Sehun. What's wrong? Do you need to go to the bathroom? Ji Sehun asked, turning toward her. Let go. She insisted, her voice sharp. Ji Sehun released her hand, and Hayeon dashed out of the room. I have no intention of seeing that old man, so stop mentioning him to me. You know I don't like him, did you forget? Ji Sehun said to Miss Lee as he picked up his cello and took his seat. After a moment of contemplation, he looked at Miss Lee sternly and told her to cancel the rehearsal for the day. At Hayeon's apartment, she rushed into her room to find it sparkling clean, clearly tidied up by her mother. Mom, what are you doing here? She asked with a smile as she met her mother in the kitchen. You're quite busy for someone who doesn't even have a job, her mom said, scolding her. That's exactly why I'm busy, Hayeon replied calmly. Didn't I tell you to keep the house clean if you're living by yourself? I can't tell if this is a home or a pigsty. Her mom continued angrily. I was going to clean it when I got back, Hayeon said defensively, leaning toward a table where her contract was. She quickly slid it out of sight and into a drawer, slamming it shut. Your laundry hasn't been done in a long time as well. Her mom yelled. I was going to do that today too. Hayeon said cheerfully, breathing a sigh of relief. Also, why is your fridge empty? There's nothing to eat in there, her mom said as they took their seats. I brought some side dishes, so make sure you finish them before they go bad. And stop ordering delivery food. It's unhealthy. Okay, Hayeon replied. Where are you coming from, anyway? Are you back from an interview? Her mom asked calmly. Well, I'm helping a friend for a month, Hayeon said. What kind of work is it? Her mother asked. I'm helping with concerts at the concert hall, Hayeon explained. It's good experience for me. I get to make connections. Are you sure it's not anything weird? Her mom inquired. What do you mean by that? I'm just working as a member of staff at a concert hall, Hayeon said, trying to hide her tension. Oh, really? Then I guess it isn't too bad, her mom replied. Yeah, so don't just show up without telling me. I had to leave early today, Hayeon said. Did you get an interview anywhere else? Her mom asked. Huh? No, not yet, Hayeon admitted. When are you going to get a stable job and get promoted? Her mom asked. There she goes again, Hayeon thought inwardly. I'd better leave. Mom, you should get going now, Hayeon said calmly. Do you want to go on a blind date? Her mom asked suddenly. A blind date? Hayeon asked, puzzled. Just like there's a right time to get a job, there's a right time for marriage. How emotionally helpful would it be to meet someone nice at your age? Her mom said. Who would want to date me? Hayeon asked her mom. That's why I'm setting you up for an arranged marriage. I've heard good things about him. His name is Choi Jinsu, her mom replied. So what, you want me to go and meet him? Hayeon asked, her expression serious. Just go and meet him. You're at the prime of your life. You should get out there and date. Also, it's common now for both people to work when they're married. He's tall and quite handsome as well. He's 31 and has a stable job, her mom said excitedly. I'm busy. I don't have time, Hayeon responded sadly. You think everyone else is free? They make time. Her mom said firmly, leaving Hayeon silent. I'll think about it, Hayeon said, turning her gaze away. Don't just think about it, actually do it. Don't you want to be a good role model for your younger siblings? Her mother's tone rose, becoming more insistent. Why are you forcing this on me for their sake? Hayeon asked, feeling the pressure. She thought to herself, who said I wanted to be the eldest? I'll give you his number. You two can talk and arrange a date to meet. Message him first, her mom said. Hayeon avoided looking at her mom and didn't respond immediately. Answer me, her mom demanded. Okay, Hayeon said quietly. He saw your picture and seemed interested. Hey, at least try to succeed in dating, her mom encouraged. Soon, Hayeon was in a taxi on her way back to Ji Sehun's apartment. Succeed? What does that even mean? She wondered, typing on her phone. She hesitated before sending, "Hello, I'm Hayeon." After sending the message, she locked her phone. Isn't an arranged marriage a bit too much? She thought to herself as the taxi drove her. She soon arrived at Ji Sehun's apartment later in the evening. What took you so long? I was waiting for you, Ji Sehun said when he saw her. You need to do a good job, considering how much I'm paying you. We're going to be around each other for a while, he continued, walking closer. What happened to your rehearsal? Hayeon asked calmly. Why are you asking me that? You should know better. You should have told me if you were leaving. I've been waiting for you this whole time, Ji Sehun said, sounding furious. Hayeon looked down, sad. Don't look away, Ji Sehun said, lifting her face. I finally got you to be here next to me, he said, his eyes intense. Why do you keep making me feel like you're running away from me? It terrifies me. Focus on me. I'll let you know from now on. Sorry. I had to see my mom. It was urgent. I also had to hide the contract I left at home, Hayeon said, gently removing his hand from her face. Wait, can I go get some water? I couldn't even have a sip earlier. Let's talk after I get a glass, she said, walking to the kitchen. In the kitchen, Hayeon leaned against the counter, tired. Ji Sehun watched as she tried to reach a cup in the cupboard. Stretching, she lost her balance, causing the plates to fall. Wait! Ji Sehun shouted, rushing to save her from the crashing plates. Hayeon held her ears and shut her eyes in fear. You should be careful, Ji Sehun said calmly. Hayeon opened her eyes. Look at me, Ji Sehun said, turning her to face him. If you're not tall enough, use a chair or something. Do I have to teach you that? He scolded. Sehun, Hayeon said, noticing something. What? He demanded. You're bleeding, Hayeon exclaimed, seeing his cut hand. Ji Sehun looked at his bleeding hand, cut by a broken plate. Are you okay? Hayeon asked, stuttering and in shock. Ji Sehun placed his hand under the sink, washing off the blood. He glanced at it but remained silent. I'll be right back. Wait here, Hayeon said, dashing toward the sitting room. Ji Sehun watched her but kept his gaze down, remaining calm. Hayeon returned with a towel. Give it here, Ji Sehun requested, stretching out his hand. Stay still, I'll take care of it, she said, ignoring his cold demeanor. She gently cleaned his injury. It's dangerous here. Let's move to the sitting room, she said, guiding him away from the broken plates. I should call 911, Hayeon said after wrapping his hand. I don't think that's necessary, Ji Sehun replied. Why not? Your hand is hurt, Hayeon said, her voice sharp with concern. Ji Sehun walked away from her, picking up his phone from the table. He made a call. Can you come upstairs for a moment? He said before ending the call. He then sat down on the sofa. Hayeon sat beside him, trembling as she held his wrapped hand. What is this? She asked, shaking. Hayeon's eyes were filled with tears as she said, I shouldn't have said I wanted water. You don't even go into the kitchen often. How are you going to play the cello now? You won't be able to play all because of me. I'm so sorry. Ji Sehun watched her silently and gently wiped her tears away. Hayeon's sobs began to subside as Ji Sehun held her head and planted a soft kiss on her forehead. Her face turned red as she stopped crying. You're shaking, Ji Sehun said softly, his hand gently rubbing her head. Say that it's my fault, he told her, his voice tender. Hayeon looked at him, her eyes wide and innocent. Ji Sehun leaned in and kissed her again. Just then, a man walked in and said, Sir, I'm here. Ji Sehun quickly pulled away from the kiss and stood up. He just kissed me, Hayeon thought, her face still red. Oh, I didn't realize you had a guest, the man said, noticing Hayeon. Did you hurt your hand? He asked, observing the wrapped injury. The man sat down and began to uncover Ji Sehun's hand. Are you a doctor? Hayeon asked calmly. Yes, I'm his designated doctor, the man replied. He then asked Ji Sehun to move his hand, which he did gently. Will he be able to play? Hayeon asked, her face showing concern. It looks like he punctured his palm. Fortunately, the wound isn't too deep, the doctor assured her. It's not? Hayeon exclaimed, her face lighting up with relief. Nope, but he'll need to be cautious while it heals, the doctor informed her. Can he still play? Hayeon asked anxiously. The wound will limit his movement, but it should clear up in 2 weeks, the doctor explained. I'm going to leave you some ointment to apply on the wound. Sanitize the area 3 times a day and apply the ointment. Also, avoid getting the wound wet. You have to be extra careful so that it doesn't get worse, the doctor tells her. Yes, sir. Hayeon replied with a serious expression. So, I won't be able to play for the time being? Ji Sehun asked calmly. Out of all the body parts, how did you hurt your hand? The doctor asked, observing Ji Sehun's injury. Hayeon flinched slightly, still feeling guilty. Ji Sehun looked at her, noticing her sad expression. There was an incident, he said, offering a vague explanation to the doctor. The doctor finishes bandaging Ji Sehun's injured hand and tells Hayeon, call me immediately if something goes wrong. Thank you so much, she says, bowing in gratitude. May I ask what your relation is to Mr. Sehun? The doctor inquires. Hayeon starts to respond, Ji Sehun interrupts, she's the woman that I like. Hayeon's face turns red, and she goes silent. Oh, I see. My apologies, I should have greeted you sooner, the doctor says, introducing himself. My name is Lee Hyun-wook. He bows slightly and shakes Hayeon's hand. Yes, my name is Kim Hayeon, she replies calmly, shaking his hand. I should have realized when I noticed you were staying here. Apologies for not recognizing you sooner. You don't have to worry too much. He's fine, the doctor reassures her in a friendlier tone. No, that's not what he means, Hayeon says, her face turning red. Inwardly, she imagines telling Dr. Lee that Ji Sehun liked touching her body, especially when she was sweaty. She pictures his reaction. Yes, Sehun does like me, she tells him. I can never tell him the truth, she thinks to herself. Please take good care of him, Dr. Lee says with a bow. Yes, indeed I will, Hayeon replies, bowing as well. Okay then, I'll be on my way, Dr. Lee says, taking his leave. Yes, thank you, she responds. Ji Sehun walks back to the sitting room and sits down on a sofa. I'll nurse you. You heard what the doctor said, right? Tell me if you need anything. I'll do it for you. I'll take care of everything, so just let me know what you need, okay? Hayeon tells him, her voice sounding serious. Ji Sehun listens to her before stretching his arms wide open. Hug me, he tells her. Huh? Hayeon says, looking tense. You need hands for this too, Ji Sehun tells her. Hayeon watches him, feeling tense, unable to take back her promise to do whatever he asked. She leans forward, accepting his request. Ji Sehun hugs her, drawing her close. Moving forward, I'll be more careful and considerate of your hand. I'll treat it as if it's my own body part. I'm sorry I left and used my free time without telling you. I annoyed you, didn't I? Hayeon says, still resting against him. Ji Sehun lets go of her, his hand gently touching her face. Thank you for helping me. What I said earlier about nursing you back to health, I wasn't just saying that for nothing. I meant it, she tells him calmly. You did? I like that, Ji Sehun says with a smirk. Your assistant seemed to be really considerate of you. If she finds out, she's going to be very surprised, isn't she? Hyungsik as well, Hayeon says. Hayeon, don't think about other people. Only think of me, Ji Sehun says, hugging her tightly and whispering into her ear. Right, of course. It's basically my fault that you got injured, she says sadly. Are you that worried? Ji Sehun asks her. Imagine how much of a burden this is to them, she replies. Ji Sehun lets go of her for a moment and picks up his phone. He makes a call to Miss Lee. Hey, it's me, he says. What's wrong? First, you tell me that you won't be rehearsing anymore, and now you're calling me? Is Hayeon home? Miss Lee asks, sounding worried. I won't be rehearsing for a while, Ji Sehun tells her. What are you talking about? She asks, shocked. That's all you need to know, Ji Sehun says coldly before ending the call. There, better? He asks Hayeon as he drops his phone on the table. I won't rehearse until I get better. No one will know. As long as we're here, no one will ever find out, he tells her. But your assistant and Hyungsik could drop by any time. I know they have the key to the door. They all work for you. We should be honest. That'll make me feel better too. I'll just apologize and tell them I'll do better next time, she says, reaching for his phone to call Miss Lee. Stop what you're doing, Ji Sehun says, snatching his phone from her. I'd better go to my room and use my own phone to call them, Hayeon thinks, getting up from her seat. Wait, sit down, Ji Sehun tells her calmly. She sits back down, obeying his words. Ji Sehun picks up his phone and clicks on something. Hayeon doesn't know what he's doing. Pack your things. The flight is at 8:20 p.m., he tells her. What do you mean by that? Hayeon asks, sounding confused. You said you were anxious about someone coming here. We can leave Korea then, he tells her. Were you booking a flight ticket just now? Hayeon asked. Yes, Ji Sehun replied. What? Why would you do that without even asking me? No, now is not the time to go on a trip. She exclaimed. You brought a suitcase, right? Ji Sehun asked. Why are you trying to hide your injury so badly? Hayeon said. It'll just complicate things if they find out. It'll affect you too, he tells her. You just hurt your hand. Now is not the time to go out. You need to rest, Hayeon insisted. I can rest there, Ji Sehun said, firm in his decision. Pack your things, and we'll stop by your place to grab your passport, he tells her. Huh? Okay, Hayeon stuttered, unable to protest further. Wait, don't do anything. Just go stand over there, she said, blocking him from packing. I'll take care of this. Just tell me what to do, she added, grabbing his suitcase. Okay, then first, my underwear, Ji Sehun said. Right, your underwear. We need to pack your underwear, she said, rushing to his room with the suitcase. After they finished packing Ji Sehun's clothes, he drove her to her apartment. It's already 4 p.m. Stay here. I'll be back with my things, Hayeon said as they reached the garage. I'll go with you, Ji Sehun replied. At her apartment, Hayeon entered her passcode. What's your passcode? I told you mine, Ji Sehun said. That's because I'm staying at your house, she replied curtly. Hayeon entered her passcode discreetly and opened the door, her face slightly red. She stepped into her room calmly, while Ji Sehun observed the space. This is it? He asked, sounding unimpressed. Huh? Yeah. Go sit on the bed and wait, she instructed. It's small because I live alone. It won't take long. Do you want something to drink? She asked, but he declined. This whole place smells like you, Ji Sehun remarked as he sat on her bed. Well, it's my house, Hayeon said, focusing on her packing. Not bad, he said, rubbing his hand on the bed. Do you have other guys over? He asked calmly. Why would you ask that? Hayeon replied, turning red as she looked at him. You're the first, she said, quickly turning away. Let's keep it that way, he said with a faint smile. After packing her things, the couple arrived at the airport. They sat in the waiting room, preparing for their flight. Do you want me to get you something to eat? Hayeon asked politely. No, you should eat. You cried a lot and used a lot of energy, he said, flipping through a magazine on the table. Isn't my sweat dirty to you? Hayeon asked. No, Ji Sehun replied. Not even my tears. She asked, looking sad. Ji Sehun watched her calmly. He placed his hands on the table, stood up, and kissed her on the head. Looks like you're about to cry again. Let's go, he said, leading the way. Hayeon watched him and noticed his bandaged hand. She rushed to him, holding his hand. I'll hold this hand. You injured it, you need to be careful, she said. I'm fine, he protested. Still, I don't want to get in the way of your healing. I'll keep an eye on it and hold this hand instead, she said. You say all the right things, Ji Sehun told her. Why did you choose this country out of all others? Hayeon asked him. I'm sick of Europe, he replied as they checked their passports. Ji Sehun appeared to have traveled more than Hayeon. You're really busy, aren't you? Do you usually stay a long time when you go? She asked. Yes, he tells her. He said he was going to Germany next time, she thought. Ask another question, Ji Sehun said. Huh? Hayeon replied, unsure of what to ask while still holding his hand. Anything about me, Ji Sehun encouraged. Oh, I do have something I'm curious about. How many languages do you speak? She asked. French, German, and English. A bit of Japanese too, he answered. You even speak Japanese? You're like a walking translator. She exclaimed. And you? He asked. I speak Chinese and English. I learned both to add to my resume, but it's really hard not to forget them. I understand why everyone studies abroad, she said calmly. And why don't you go? Ji Sehun asked. Hayeon didn't reply, her face looked sad. I will once I get a job. I haven't been on a trip in a while, she said as they got closer to the check-in counter. Ji Sehun held her hand warmly. I'm taking you now, he told her. Even though this is an unplanned vacation, we won't be doing any tourist stuff. The point of this trip is to get enough rest to heal. Understand? Hayeon told Ji Sehun as they boarded the plane. I hope you're able to recover and get back on track as soon as possible. I'm sure a bit of rest will get you back in great condition in no time, she added. Does it seem difficult? He asked, turning to her. I'm just worried, that's all. I know how good you are. I heard you play before, Hayeon said. There won't be an issue as long as you keep your full attention on me, he assured her. So? She asked. Deep down, Hayeon was a bit nervous. She hadn't spent a full day out with someone before, not even her boyfriend. That's why I'm taking this flight with you, she said. They boarded the plane and entered the first-class cabin. Hayeon wondered how Ji Sehun had managed to book the flight so quickly. She didn't realize they were in first class until she took out her bag to put it in the overhead compartment. Ah! Ji Sehun exclaimed, rushing to stop her. This startled Hayeon. Do you want me to get that for you? A flight attendant offered with a smile. Ah yes. Thank you, Hayeon replied with a smile. Ji Sehun gently slid his hand from her head. There are people here to do that. You don't have to, he said. You shouldn't do it either. If you get injured because of me one more time, I won't be able to sleep, Hayeon said, a bit angrily. Won't be able to sleep? Ji Sehun wondered. That's not too bad, he said softly. Is there anything else I can get you? The flight attendant asked Hayeon after she was seated. No, we're good. Thank you so much. Hayeon replied cheerfully. Ji Sehun glanced at her from his seat. Talk to me that way, he said. What do you mean? She asked, unsure of his meaning. Talk to me with that voice again, he said, staring at her with a serious expression. Hayeon, still looking at him, turned her face forward, wearing a grin. The couple soon arrived at their destination. Outside the airport, Hayeon exclaimed, It's so hot here. Where are we staying? She asked Ji Sehun as she rolled their luggage. A driver stood waiting for them, holding a welcome sign with a smile. Welcome, he said. When did you make all the reservations? Hayeon asked, turning to Ji Sehun. Earlier, he replied. Hayeon was surprised by his ability to handle all these details as they followed the driver, who helped with their luggage. They soon arrived at their resort. Wow, Hayeon exclaimed, taking in the sight of the resort. Ji Sehun placed his hand on her shoulder. It's so nice, she said, holding his hand. At the front desk, a receptionist greeted them warmly. Welcome. Would you like to check in? She asked politely. Yes, here you go, Hayeon said, handing over their passports. The receptionist thanked her. Are you guys on honeymoon? The receptionist asked. Hayeon was about to say no, but Ji Sehun answered yes. What? Hayeon exclaimed, turning to look at him. Play along, Ji Sehun said. Why do I need to do that? She asked. We're only here for a short time. Who cares what we say? He replied. You don't want to? He asked calmly. No, it's not that I don't want to, she said, feeling tense. She thought about how people might find it odd for two people who weren't dating to share a room. Their tour guide then offered them a seat as they waited for their room to be prepared. "Let me give you a brief explanation of the resort," he said. "Do you have any questions?" he asked once they were seated. "Do you have a doctor here at the resort?" Hayeon inquired. "Do you need a doctor?" the man asked. "Yes, he hurt his hand," she replied. The tour guide informed her that there was a hospital within 20 kilometers of the resort and drew a rough sketch showing the direction. "How do we get there?" Hayeon asked. "If you call the front desk, they'll have a van ready for you," he said. "Thank you," Hayeon responded. Ji Sehun placed his hand on her shoulder. "Let's go now." "I'm tired," he whispered. "Is the room ready yet?" Hayeon asked the tour guide. "It's ready now," he said, leading them to their room. The tour guide led the way to their room. "We're here," he said, unlocking the door. Inside, Hayeon was taken aback by the neatness of the room. "Whoa, this is," she said, her cheeks reddening as she saw the room arranged for a couple's honeymoon. The tour guide pointed to a bottle of champagne. "This is the champagne we give to all newlyweds who are on their honeymoon." Ji Sehun picked up the wine. "Is there anything else I can get you?" the tour guide asked. "Is there a room with 2 beds?" Hayeon asked, looking tense. "There is, but do you want to change rooms?" the man asked, sounding surprised. Ji Sehun, standing behind the tour guide, gave Hayeon a stern look, almost as a warning. No. That's okay. "Thank you, here's your tip," she said, handing the man a tip. "Thank you. I hope you enjoy your stay as well," the man replied before leaving the room. Hayeon turned to Ji Sehun. "You injured your hand. What if I touch it in my sleep? Wouldn't it be better if we slept in separate beds? You're not the type to sleep with other people, right?" she asked. "I want to sleep with you," Ji Sehun said. Hayeon continued, "I have bad sleeping habits. I toss and turn and might hit you in my sleep. I also grind my teeth and sometimes snore if I'm super tired." Ji Sehun walked gently towards her, unaffected by her concerns. "Guess I'll have to find out for myself," he said with a soft smile. "Find out for yourself? I guess I don't have any other excuses. Let me just do what he says." "He's injured after all," Hayeon said inwardly. "You said you were tired, right? Let me clean off the bed," she offers, removing the petals from the bed. "Let's wash up." Ji Sehun heads towards the bathroom. "Okay. You go ahead and shower first," she says. "Together," he replies, turning toward her. "Huh?" She's taken aback, appearing frozen. "You have to help me, remember?" he reminds her. "Oh right. You're right. Next time, could you maybe be clearer about what you need?" "I keep misunderstanding you," Hayeon says, sounding confused. "Misunderstand me all you want. I don't mind. Do whatever you want," he says before entering the bathroom and shutting the door behind him. Hayeon watches the door for a moment, then sighs in relief, holding her head. "I wonder how he felt. Did he like my tears? I guess just sleeping in the same bed isn't such a big deal. I need to be there to take care of him after all," she thinks, before heading to the bathroom. She knocks gently before stepping in. "You're already undressed?" she exclaims, seeing him in just his shorts. "Oh, you should have waited for me. I was going to help you with that," she says, as she prepares the bath. "I guess I'll need to see his bare body to take care of him," she thinks inwardly as she prepared the bathtub for him. "Do you want to lean against the tub? I'll wash your hair first," she asks. Ji Sehun steps out from the shower, stands by the door, and gestures for her to come. Hayeon approaches, and he pulls her inside, locking the door behind her. "What are you doing?" she asks, noticing his intense gaze. "Showering," he replies. They share a brief, silent look. "You should take your clothes off too if you don't want to get wet," Ji Sehun says. "I have extra clothes in case I get wet." "And you don't just tell a woman to get undressed like that," she responds sharply. "Is that so? Do you want me to think of you that way? You're wearing underwear anyway, aren't you?" Ji Sehun asks, sounding puzzled. "You're a man. It's different," Hayeon replies, fuming. "How so?" Ji Sehun inquires. "I have volume in certain places. You don't," she explains, placing her hands on her waist. "Wait. What am I saying? Why am I even bothering to explain this to him? She thought. Men have volume too, he says calmly. Where? Hayeon asks, fixing her gaze on his waist. Yeah, you're right. Men and women have something in common. Ha ha ha. Interesting. She exclaims, turning her face away to hide her flushed cheeks. Are you not going to get undressed? Ji Sehun asks. I'm not. Now raise your arms up for me, she instructs. Let's get this over with so I can go, she says, but Ji Sehun interrupts her by turning on the tap and spraying water at her. She gasps in shock, trying to shield herself with her hand. Now I can see through you. It's more revealing, don't you think? He observes, watching her wet body. Are you trying to seduce me? Ji Sehun asks, touching her hair. Suddenly, she grabs the shower head from his hand and turns it toward him, laughing as he gets soaked. You're all wet now too. Are you trying to seduce me? She mimics his tone. Ji Sehun watches her calmly. Do you like it? He asks with a smirk. Hayeon's face turns red. She looks away, not responding. Wash my body first, will you? He requests. Wait, let me get a loofah, she says, trying to leave the shower, but Ji Sehun stops her by placing his hand against the door. Do it with your hands. I like it better, he tells her. There won't be any bubbles if I use my hands, she points out. Rub my body until there are, he insists. Hayeon calmly takes the shower gel and pours it on her hand. As she approaches his back, her heart races. She gently rubs her hand over his body, thinking, I'll just think of this as me exploring the human body. You're rubbing the same spot repeatedly, Ji Sehun comments, causing her to flinch. No, I don't think that's going to work. I'll just imagine I'm giving an animal a bath, she thinks, closing her eyes as she continues. Hayeon continues to rub her hands against his chest, trying to keep her focus. I'm a zookeeper. A zookeeper, she repeats to herself, attempting to distract herself from what she's doing. You touching me like that is. Ji Sehun starts, drawing her attention. Why? What's wrong? Is it uncomfortable? Did I rub too hard? Should I be more gentle? She asks, her voice filled with concern. Do it harder, he replies, seemingly enjoying her touch as he closes his eyes and savors the moment. Is this better? Hayeon asks, tightening her grip on his arm. Yeah, he confirms. You said you'd do anything for me, right? He asks calmly, receiving a prompt yes from her. With that speed, rub me all over, he instructs, drawing her closer, their eyes locking. Your legs. You want me to rub your legs, right? Hayeon asks. But I can't move if you're holding me like this. Can you move aside? She asked politely. Use your legs, he tells her. Bubbles should form if we rub against each other like this, she says, her body trembling slightly. I don't see any bubbles, Ji Sehun responds. Stop doing that with your legs, Hayeon tells him as he rubs his legs against hers. Should I use my hands then? He asks, making her blush. Wait, what's this? She asks, noticing something in his hair. What? He asks, sounding confused. There's something in your hair. Let me get it out for you, stay still, she says, as he bows his head slightly for a closer look. What about on my body? Do I have anything there? He asks, raising his head to meet her gaze. Why don't you look closer and see if there's more? He says with a smile. You're all set now. It was just dust, she says with a tense smile, her face still blushing. Let's get you cleaned off now. She grabs the shower head and begins washing his body gently. Hey, how old did you say you were? Ji Sehun asks. I'm 26. Why? She replies, focusing on his body. Then why are you so adorable? He says warmly. Lean forward so I can wash your hair, Hayeon instructs, her face red. Then you didn't really get the dust, did you? He asks. Ji Sehun bows his head, allowing her to wash his hair. His hair is so soft, she thought inwardly as she feels his hair. There. All done, she says, turning off the shower. Ji Sehun raised his head and held his hair back. Can you wipe my eyes? He asks, closing one eye. And my lips too, he adds, causing her to flinch. Hayeon gently wipes his lips. Ji Sehun opens his mouth and lightly licks her finger. He holds her hand and sucks on her finger. Hayeon closes her eyes, her face reddening. She moans softly before quickly withdrawing her finger. Your finger is quite long. It was worth tasting. I didn't kiss you, so we're good, right? He says. Humph. He's the one trying to seduce me, Hayeon thought, keeping her composure as she observes him. I'll let you sleep early tonight, Ji Sehun says. Wow, thanks, she replies with a smile. The next morning, they are cuddled together as they sleep. Hayeon wakes up gently. Now he's wrapping his arms around my waist so naturally, she thinks, carefully moving away from him. She hurries through her bath and grabs a bottle of water for Ji Sehun. Sehun, wake up, she says, rubbing his face with the cold water to rouse him. He grabs the water bottle and drinks as he sits up. Let's clean your wound and put on a new bandage, she tells him as he finishes drinking. He extends his hand toward her. Hayeon carefully unwraps his bandage and cleans the wound with the medicine provided by his doctor. Ji Sehun watches her attentively. Good morning, he greets her. Huh? Yeah, she responds. Good morning, Hayeon replies. You don't have to put so much effort into it, Ji Sehun says. How could I not? Hang in there, she tells him, focusing on changing his bandage. All done. Let's wash up and get breakfast, she adds cheerfully. I want to sleep more, Ji Sehun says, lying back down. Oh, you do? I guess it's okay to rest a lot when you're injured, but have some breakfast first, she protests. I don't want to. Lay in bed with me, he says, pulling her close by the waist. I'm not sleepy. Are you sure you're not going to have anything? Hayeon asked him. I'm sure, he tells her. But I'm hungry, she says. Ji Sehun got up quickly. Get dressed, he tells her. The couple soon leaves their room and heads to the restaurant. They find a table set for them on the beach. Sit down, Ji Sehun says politely, holding her chair for her. Hayeon, seated, watches the ocean's waves and enjoys the vacation. You look happy, Ji Sehun says, his face lighting up with a smile. Ah, she exclaimed in surprise. What do you want to eat? I'll get it for you, Hayeon offered, standing up from her seat. I'll have what you're having, Ji Sehun replied, before she hurried off to get their meal. Excuse me. Are you not Ji Sehun? A man said politely, approaching Ji Sehun. Oh wow. Sehun, I'm a huge fan, the man said with a smile, recognizing Ji Sehun. Okay, Ji Sehun responded, looking a bit awkward. I love your music. You really put your heart into the performance. I even bought tickets to your show in New York, the man continued. I'm here on vacation. You should enjoy your time here too, Ji Sehun said. It's a pleasant surprise to meet you. Is it okay if I join you? The man asked politely. Ji Sehun sighed, closing his eyes in an attempt to dismiss the gentleman. Excuse me. Can I help you? Hayeon asked, placing a plate on the table. I'm a huge fan of Sehun, the man said excitedly. Oh, really? That's great. Thank you so much. Where are you from? Hayeon asked politely. I'm Tom from England, the man introduced himself. Wow, England. Isn't this place wonderful? Hayeon said, her face lighting up. Yes, definitely. It's heaven on earth, Tom agreed. How long have you been here? She asked. A little over a week, Tom said. We just arrived this morning. Sehun needed a break to refresh. Are you here alone, Tom? Hayeon inquired politely. I'm here with my wife and son. We're on vacation too, Tom replied. Across the table, Tom's family watched them, smiling warmly. His son waved at them. It looks like your son is waiting for you to go back. He's been looking this way the whole time. I'm sure Sehun is happy to meet a big fan like you, but I'm glad I could meet you too, Hayeon said with a smile. Yes, I was pretty surprised myself, Tom replied. Still, I think we should both respect the fact that we're here on vacation, right? A short encounter leaves a stronger impression. That's true. Well, I'll be getting back to my family, Tom said. It was very nice to meet you. Enjoy your vacation, Hayeon said, bidding him farewell. You too, oh Sehun, I always look forward to your concerts. I hope you can regain your energy while you're here, Tom added before leaving. Phew, was my pronunciation weird? I haven't spoken English in a long time. Thank goodness he didn't notice your hand. It's best if no one knows. We don't want any drama. If only I were a bit taller. I was worried I wouldn't be able to hide it, Hayeon said nervously to Ji Sehun. Where's the food? He asked. Oh, I was filling a plate when I came over to see what he wanted. I'll go get it. I looked to see if you were doing okay and saw a man standing over you, so I ran straight here, she explained. Why? He asked. Huh? Hayeon exclaimed, unsure of his question. Why did you run straight here? Ji Sehun clarified. Because you don't like people annoying you, she replied. I love how she makes me feel, but she's also a good manager, he thought, observing her quietly. Hayeon watched him silently. I'm going to go get your food, she said. I have a lot of money, Ji Sehun said, halting Hayeon's walk. Huh? She asked, not understanding his words. I'll give you all of it. If I do, will you stay with me? He asked. There was a brief silence. What is he talking about? He must be really hungry. I'd better hurry up and get him some food, she thought, looking tense. Stay here. I'll be back with your food, she told him. Answer me before you go, he demanded. I know you have a lot of money. I'm already accepting more than I should, so stop offering me more. It makes me uncomfortable, she said. I hope he doesn't take it the wrong way, she thought inwardly, watching him silently. I'm learning a lot while I'm with you, she tells him. If I can learn to deal with your personality, I'm sure I can work for any boss, she added with a smile before walking away. That's not what I meant, Ji Sehun said, looking sad. What does he mean? Hayeon thought, flinching at his words. She paused and turned back to him. Then what did you mean by that? She asked. Ji Sehun remained silent, his gaze fixed on the beach sand. I can't answer her. I don't know how to put these emotions into words. If I had my cello, it wouldn't be difficult to express these feelings. Right now, all I can do is find the right words so that Hayeon can understand, he thought. He looked up, still not speaking. You have no flaws. So I want you, he tells her. I want you all to myself, he thought. Hayeon giggled. Did you forget? I'm basically your employee for a month. And I'm already living with you, she said. That's not it, Ji Sehun said to himself, struggling to express his feelings. Here, eat this first. I'll go get more, Hayeon said, placing a plate of food on his table. She walked away gently to get more food. As Ji Sehun shifted his gaze from her, she dashed away and hid behind a tree. What was that? I thought he meant he wanted me to stay by him a bit longer, she exclaimed, pressing her hand against her chest to calm her racing heart. She peered at him, thinking, of course I misunderstood. I've never seen him look so serious. What on earth is going on inside his head? I guess what he means is that he wants me whenever he wants. No flaws? That's a compliment. I'll take it as a good thing. But why do I feel this way? I don't think I've ever had someone tell me I don't have any flaws, she thought, still observing him. Hayeon looked up at the sky. I'm sweating. Of course, he's going to like that, she thought, feeling beads of sweat forming on her forehead. Soon, Hayeon was at the beach enjoying the sun. Heaven on earth. Eden. Utopia. Words can't describe this place. This is heaven. Being outside of reality lets me relax, she thought happily, enjoying the vacation with no worries. She disinfects Sehun's hand 3 times a day and helps him bathe when needed. At night, they eat and go to bed. All I have to do is stay where he can see me. Naturally, I don't have much free time, but I'm okay with that. He injured his hand because of me, so it would only worry me more if I left him alone, she thought. One morning, Hayeon was outdoors with Sehun. If there's one thing that's hard to bear, it's the scorching sun. Gah, it's so hot. Hayeon exclaimed, drenched in sweat. Ugh, this is lukewarm. It's only been 10 minutes, but the ice already melted. Why can't he just leave the room by himself if he wants fresh air so much? He always has to take me with him once a day, she thought angrily, watching him enjoy the sun. Hey, Sehun, Hayeon called out. Yeah? He responded. It's so hot. I think I'm going to suffocate, she said. Just a little bit longer, he told her. I'm going to die from dehydration, she complained. Order more, Ji Sehun said. I'm already on my 5th glass. Everything I drink seems to turn into sweat. My bra is soaked and it's suffocating me. She told him. Take off your clothes if you're hot or go into the pool, he suggested with a smile, standing next to her chair. A few days ago, Hayeon had been caught with the bikini she brought just in case she wanted to swim. Since then, Ji Sehun had been insistent about her going to the pool. Do you want to go to the pool? He asked one evening. He kept suggesting it repeatedly. He won't stop suggesting I go to the pool with him, she thought, watching him with a serious expression. No, she replied, turning her head away. Ha! It's so hot, she added, still lying down. Hey, turn around, he said. Why? She asked. I want to see your face, he replied. You're enjoying seeing me suffer, aren't you? Hayeon accused, turning to face him. No, he said, touching her face. Yes, you are, she insisted. I'll be right back. I'm going to the bathroom, she said, and he let go of her face without a word. Oh, he's letting me, she thought in awe before dashing inside the house. Yes. This is exactly what I needed, she exclaimed excitedly as the cool room eased her discomfort. I didn't even have time to check my phone, she said inwardly. She picked up her phone from the bed and noticed a new message. Hello, Hayeon. This is Choi Jinsu, she read aloud. Who is this? She wondered. Oh, it's the guy my mom was trying to set me up with. What do? I totally forgot about it, she thought, quickly typing a response that she was currently away. Yes, I'm aware. Your mother told me, came the reply. Ah, I see, she responded. I told my mom I was going away as part of the concert staff. She must have mentioned that to him, she thought. How do I keep the conversation going? It's awkward. I'll just have a better conversation with him when we meet in person, she resolved. How is it over there? If it's okay with you, can you send me a picture? I think it'll help me get through the workday, Choi Jinsu texted. Sure, I'm working at the moment, but I can send it to you later, Hayeon replied. Sorry if it's a bother, he texted back. Not at all, she wrote. She was engrossed in her work and didn't notice Ji Sehun coming into the room. Just send me the picture whenever you can, Choi Jinsu's message read. Sure. Of the scenery? She texted. No, of you, he replied. Let's go out for dinner tonight, Ji Sehun said, startling Hayeon as she noticed his presence in the room. She quickly hid her phone. Yeah, sure. Are you hungry? She asked. What are you hiding? He inquired. What do you mean? She asked, pretending not to know what he meant. Let's go get washed up, he said. Okay. You go ahead and wait for me inside, she replied, her expression tense. Sorry, I'll have to get back to you later, Hayeon texted before switching off her phone. How long have we been here? Ji Sehun asked during dinner. A week, she responded. What made you want to come to a restaurant all of a sudden? You don't usually like noisy, crowded places, she said. It seemed like you wanted to come out. Was I wrong? He asked with a smile as he cleaned his hands. No, you're right. I felt like I'd regret it otherwise, she said calmly. Who knows when I'll be able to come to a place like this again, she thought. Hayeon noticed a piano in the room and watched him eat. Is your hand okay? She asked. No, he replied. We had removed his bandage since the wound had healed, but of course, he won't be completely recovered, she thought. What are you looking at? Ji Sehun asked, noticing her distraction. Aren't you worried? She asked him. No, not really, he said. Internally, Ji Sehun knew she wanted to see him play, but he didn't want to perform in an unprepared setting. He noticed she wasn't eating and wondered if she disliked the food. Why am I worried about this stuff? It's not like me. But every time I see you, my thoughts just run off on their own, he thought. Do you want me to play for you? He asked Hayeon. Hayeon's disbelief was evident. The piano? She asked in shock. Ji Sehun with a smile said, if you play for me, I'll play for you too. What Ji Sehun didn't know was that Hayeon was actually afraid of playing the piano. She had been forced to learn it back in middle school. You have to learn piano for liberal arts. You have no discipline. Her mother had scolded, while she cried. Her mother believed she wanted to quit due to a lack of discipline, but the real reason was that she hated the pain of the pen jabbing into her hands every time she made a mistake. That feeling, combined with constant criticism, made her loathe the piano. Hayeon's expression was cold as she watched Ji Sehun. "You're really going to play too?" she asked calmly. "Yes," Ji Sehun replied. "Okay, then I'll play too. But you have to promise me you'll keep playing after my pathetic performance, okay?" she said. "What are you talking about?" "I'm going to play with you," Ji Sehun said, sounding uncertain about her worries. "Oh," Hayeon said, remembering when they had watched Ji Sehun's performance on TV. He had mentioned wanting to play the cello with her while she played the piano. "I didn't know he actually meant it," she thought, feeling tense. "Wait here. I'll go talk to the owner," she said, jumping up from her seat. After speaking with the manager for a while, she returned to Ji Sehun. "He said we can use the stage until 8 p.m. when the live show starts," she informed him. "I only remember one song though. Do you think you can play it?" She showed him the music sheet. Ji Sehun scrolled through her phone, examining the music sheet. Hayeon watched him, thinking about how this was the last song she played and one of the pieces where she made many mistakes, leaving marks on her fingers from the pen jabs. He jumped up from his seat. "Don't you need to take a better look at it?" Hayeon asked, shocked. "I've read it all," Ji Sehun replied, heading towards the stage. Upon arrival, he discovered a contrabass instead of a cello. "I thought they had a cello. Isn't this a contrabass?" Hayeon asked, stunned. "They look similar, so I thought it was a cello." "What do we do?" "I can play it," Ji Sehun said, picking up the contrabass. "Can you play the violin too?" she wondered. "Hurry up," Ji Sehun tells her. "Hold on a second," Hayeon said, dashing away. Ji Sehun thought, so she really doesn't know much about music. A cello isn't usually played in jazz concerts. Maybe she can't play the piano either. "Sehun here," she said with a smile, returning with a cello. "They said it's from a staff member who used to play it here. It's really old, so they can't guarantee the sound." "Do you think you can play it?" she asked calmly. Ji Sehun looked at the old cello and the small corner stage in the restaurant. Unbelievable, he thought. An old cello found in storage, in a restaurant overseas. "Of course I can play. It's my first performance with you," he said with a smile. To Ji Sehun, the most unbelievable thing of all was Hayeon. They sat down, each taking their place with their musical instruments. "This thing is in really bad condition," Ji Sehun said, testing the cello. Hayeon didn't respond, her gaze fixed on the piano with a tense expression. "I haven't sat at a piano in years," she thought. She sighed and touched the keys, trying to relax and be cheerful. As she played slowly, a voice echoed in her mind, recalling the jabs of the pen her instructor used to discipline her. Hayeon retracted her hand quickly, almost shouting in fear. "Don't stop. Keep going," Ji Sehun urged, turning his gaze towards her. "I might forget in the middle," she said. "It doesn't matter. Just keep playing," he reassured her. "But we're performing together." "I can't do that," she said. "Don't feel pressured to be perfect. I'll fill in for you." "Don't worry about it," he told her. Feeling reassured by his encouragement, Hayeon's face flushed and her heart raced. Finally, she began to play. "Yeah, who cares if I make a mistake? Sehun is here with me. Just enjoy the moment," she told herself. As they played melodiously, Ji Sehun enjoyed the moment, expertly playing the cello while Hayeon played the piano. The room was filled with their rhythms. "Oh no, I slipped," she said, fearfully missing a note. "That's okay. It's fine," Ji Sehun reassured her. As she concluded her performance, Hayeon was surprised to find that she had enjoyed playing the piano. Ji Sehun continued playing, nodding at her, and Hayeon, touched and speechless, resumed playing to join him. "I can't believe the cello Sehun is playing is so old," she thought, enjoying the music and feeling her heart race. The crowd applauded as they finished. "Oh, thank you," Hayeon exclaimed, both of them bowing slightly in gratitude. Hayeon dashed towards Ji Sehun and hugged him in joy. That was the best performance ever. I never knew it could be this fun to play on stage. If I had known, I wouldn't have quit practicing, she said, burying her face in his chest. You can always listen to me play, Ji Sehun said calmly. You were amazing today. If you don't mind, could we go for a drink? She asked, her voice filled with excitement. What do I do with this woman? Ji Sehun thought, watching her happy face. I even like her mediocre piano skills, he said inwardly. Just don't pretend to be drunk like last time, okay? Today, let's drink to our true limits. What do you say? Hayeon with a smile. Can you handle it? Ji Sehun asked her. If I can't handle you, who will? Hayeon tells him. Fine. Let's go all the way then, he agreed with a smile. Back at their cabin, Hayeon stayed outside, feeling a bit tipsy. I think I drank too much, she said, laughing loudly. Everybody clapped for me. Hey. I'm so happy, she added, her face flushed. Feel like some champagne? Ji Sehun asked, stepping outside with a bottle. Yeah, let's do it. That's the good stuff. Let's finish it off, she said. He opened the bottle and poured a glass for each of them. They drank slowly. Hayeon exclaimed, finishing her glass in one gulp. She leaned back, feeling the effects of the alcohol. I feel so happy today, she said calmly. I'm glad, Ji Sehun responded. What about you? How do you feel? He asked her. Hayeon asked, about what? You have everything and can do whatever you want, she said. I never thought about it, Ji Sehun replied. Haha. I knew it. I got it right. Hayeon blurted out, laughing loudly. She then calmed down and said, So, there isn't anything in this world that you can't do, right? It's right in front of me, Ji Sehun replied, his eyes fixed on her. Has he been looking at me this whole time? Hayeon wondered, noticing his gaze. He set his glass on the table and asked, So, what do you think? Hayeon tried to hold back a hiccup, but it was noticeable. What's wrong? Ji Sehun asked, standing up quickly. He took her hand and leaned closer. Look at me, he said. Hayeon met his gaze seriously and said, I want you to kiss me. Ji Sehun closed his eyes and leaned in as they kissed. He gently adjusted the straps of her dress. Hey, ease up there. Hayeon exclaimed, her face flushed as she tapped his shoulder. Is this too much? Ji Sehun asked calmly. Yeah, just slow down, she replied. How about you let me go a little bit further? Just for today. Please? He pleaded gently. Okay, Hayeon consented. Inwardly, she kept thinking about Sehun playing on stage earlier, fantasizing about his long fingers and quick hands. His fingers that played the cello. I can hear the music. He's playing me like he played with the beat, making me want more, she thought as she got lost in the moment. Ji Sehun sucked her gently. Hayeon let out soft moans, but then she pleaded wait, prompting him to stop. Did it hurt? Ji Sehun asked, his face showing concern. No, it didn't hurt at all. I liked it, she reassured him, resuming their kiss. Ji Sehun paused for a moment, unbuttoning his shirt and pulling it off. From the moment I saw you lying down, you have no idea how much I've wanted to do this, he said, his face expressing happiness. Ji Sehun held her close, gently biting her ear. You're really turned on, he whispered. Hayeon let out soft moans, gripping the chair tightly. Hayeon, he whispered gently. Sehun, wait, she begged. Relax, he told her, though she found it difficult. I said relax, not hold your breath. Focus on me, he added gently as he lay on top of her. Hayeon held him close. I haven't even started yet because of you, he said before proceeding. Hayeon moaned, and Ji Sehun continued, you even sound nice. Ask me for more, he tells her, touching her lips as she watched him quietly, her face flushed. I'll give you everything, he tells her before proceeding. The next morning, they slept peacefully. It's cold, Hayeon thought, her hand resting on Ji Sehun's chest. It's Sehun's chest. It doesn't even surprise me anymore, she reflected. As she slid closer, she felt his skin against hers and her eyes widened in amazement. She quickly turned her head, dumbfounded, and peeked under the bedsheet. He's not wearing a single piece of clothing. And I'm not either. We're completely naked, she thought, covering her mouth in shock with her face flushed. Hayeon got up and dashed into the bathroom, shutting the door behind her. In front of the mirror, she noticed red spots on her neck from the night before. Kim Hain, you've completely lost it. I said you could drink, not sleep with him, she said almost loudly before covering her mouth to avoid waking Ji Sehun. I'd better shower first, she decided, heading to the shower. I'm never drinking again. It was the alcohol. I got excited. I was drunk on the mood, she thought as she showered. I was clearly not myself, Hayeon thought, her mind drifting back to their intimate moments from the previous night. I like it. I like you, she remembered, thinking about Ji Sehun's flushed face. Ugh, I want to get it out of my head, but it keeps popping up, she thought angrily, trying to forget their romance. We both wanted it, but the issue isn't the intimate contact, it's... she thought, but was startled when Ji Sehun suddenly appeared in the bathroom. Let's shower together, he said, startling Hayeon. Why didn't you wake me up? He asked. Huh? Oh, I just thought you'd want to sleep in, she replied. Are you finished? He inquired. Yeah, I'm done, Hayeon said, still clutching herself. Yeah, she tells him. I'm completely done, she repeated as she sat down in the bathroom, feeling uneasy. I was naked and fine with it yesterday. But now I can't stand up, she thought, her face turned away from Ji Sehun. Ji Sehun covered her with a bathrobe. I remember everything from last night. But what if he doesn't? We did have a lot to drink, she pondered as she slowly put on the bathrobe. If you're done, wait for me outside, he told her. Okay, she said. God, if you're there, please erase his memory, she thought inwardly as she walked gently towards the door. How's your throat? You were pretty loud last night, Ji Sehun said with a smirk, startling Hayeon as she left without responding. In the bedroom, Hayeon's heart raced when she saw some condom wrappers on the floor. Ah, no way. Seriously? She exclaimed, covering her flushed face with her hands. Let's just forget it all. Ji Sehun's face flashed through her thoughts. How in the world did I fall for a guy like him? She wondered. Ji Sehun emerged from the bathroom and said, the contract. How about we get rid of it? Get rid of the contract? What do you mean? Hayeon asked, unsure. We slept together last night, he said. What does that have to do with the contract? Does Sehun have feelings for me too? She thought. Ji Sehun sat opposite her. You're going to blame the alcohol and pretend you don't remember last night, aren't you? He asked, leaning toward her. No. I remember everything, she said, her head bowed. I enjoyed last night so much I can't stop thinking about it. What about you? He asked, lifting her face. Me too. It wasn't bad, she confessed, her face flushed. You're worried about my safety. You went to a noisy restaurant with me, even though you usually can't stand places like that. You played on stage just for me. You want more than just my body, Hayeon thought as she watched Ji Sehun's face. Not bad means that you enjoyed it, right? He asked with a smile. Hayeon didn't reply. So we feel the same then, he said. Normally, I'd be bored with her by now. But for some reason, I like her even more. It's as if my heart is overflowing with music. She's made all my past performances seem insignificant, Ji Sehun thought, glancing at her. I don't think I can live without you anymore, he tells Hayeon. I have to accept it now. You don't give me a chance to get bored of you. You're special. I don't think I've ever liked someone this much, to the point that even the cello seems meaningless to me, Ji Sehun thought, letting go of her face. Get rid of the contract and just move in, he said as he walked to the table. Here. Use what's in here whenever you need to. Let me know if it's not enough. I'll give you more when we go back to Korea, he said, placing his wallet on her lap. No limits on physical contact anymore, okay? I can't bear hearing that it's too much every time I touch you, he added. What is this? Hayeon asked, noticing the debit cards in the wallet. It's yours now, Ji Sehun replied. What do you mean by that? Hayeon asked, her voice sounding angry. By what? Ji Sehun asked, sounding confused. That's all you have to say to me? She asked rudely, turning her gaze away from him. Did I miss something? He asked, still confused. I mean, you like me, don't you? She asked loudly. Yeah, I do. That's why I'm suggesting we get rid of the contract and just keep doing this. Do you think I'd say this if I didn't want to? He asked, his voice sounding sad. Even when the contract ends, I'm still going to feel the same way. So, I want you all to myself, he thought. You said you enjoyed being with me. Let's get rid of the contract. We're compatible in bed. We can figure out the other things as we go, he told her, leaning closer. You jerk. Get your hands off me, Hayeon said seriously. Later in the afternoon, Ji Sehun remained in bed as Hayeon tried to wake him. Sehun, wake up, she said. He opened his eyes and reached for her, but she quickly dashed away from his grasp. What's your problem? He asked, sounding serious. Nothing. I'm hungry. Let's go eat, she replied. What is it that you want? I'll give it to you, he said, but she didn't answer, her attention focused on arranging the bed. Nothing. I don't want anything, she said, walking away. At the beach, Ji Sehun sat down. You can get your own food now that your hand is almost healed, right? She asked, walking away to get food for herself. Offer me money after sex? Typical of him. How could I fall for a guy like that? Thank God I didn't tell him all of my feelings, she thought angrily as she served herself. Hayeon paused, reflecting on her emotions. What did I expect? So stupid, she told herself. She returned with her food and slammed it on the table. You're acting like this since my hand is healed? Ji Sehun asked, but she paid him no attention as she ate. Let's get rid of the contract, Ji Sehun said. Why should we? We've already come this far. The only way to get the rest of my money is to finish the contract anyway, Hayeon demanded. But I gave it to you, he said calmly. Hayeon turned away in disgust. You and I. Was that a one-night stand? Ji Sehun asked. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. We were both drunk anyway. Let's just say we both enjoyed it and leave it at that. She said harshly. You enjoyed it? He asked, sounding perplexed. Yeah, you were pretty good, she said, smiling. Hayeon's phone vibrated, signaling a new message. It was from Choi Jin-soo, asking if she had had lunch. She replied that she had, and asked if he had. He confirmed that he had. Jin-soo then texted, when are you coming back to Korea? Hayeon read the message aloud and asked Ji Sehun, when are we going back to Korea? Give that to me, Ji Sehun said, reaching for her phone. What? Why? Hayeon asked, looking perplexed. Give it here, he demanded. No. What gives you the right to look at my phone? Hayeon countered. You're hiding it from me, so it must be another guy, Ji Sehun said. Fine. It is. Can you please tell me when we're going back so I can go see him? She retorted. See who? Ji Sehun asked, his eyes widening in shock. Just then, Ji Sehun's phone rang. It must be something urgent. You should take it, Hayeon suggested. He answered the call. What? What else would I be doing? I'm with Kim Hayeon, he said. Hayeon noticed the way he called her name. Kim Hayeon? He only calls me Hayeon when he's in a good mood, she thought with a scoff. Ji Sehun went silent as he listened to the caller. Okay, bye, he said coldly, ending the call. Who was that? Hayeon asked politely. My manager, Hyung-sik, Ji Sehun replied. What did he say? Does he want to see you? She asked, sounding surprised. I should ask more questions to change the subject, she thought. It's nothing, he said. Can I ask what you two talked about? She inquired. Someone died, Ji Sehun said. What? Hayeon asked, her face showing concern. Who? Hayeon asked. Someone who used to teach me cello a long time ago, Ji Sehun replied. Let's go back to our room and get some sleep if you're done eating. I'm tired, he said, getting up from his seat. Wait, Sehun. If someone like that passed away, now is not the time to be here. We should go back to Korea, she said, her face tense. Why? He asked coldly. What do you mean, why? Your cello teacher passed away. Shouldn't you go to their funeral? Hayeon asked. Why would I go? He passed away because it was his time. It's not a big deal, Ji Sehun said harshly. You probably won't even show up to my funeral if I die, will you? Hayeon asked seriously. Why would you die? Ji Sehun replied. Let's go back to Korea. You need to go to the funeral. You have to, she said, bowing her head, her face sad. Okay. I'll go. Now stop making that face, he told her. They soon boarded their flight back to Korea, ending their vacation. They sat quietly in their seats. She's not even noticing me now that my hand is healed. At this rate, she'll just do whatever she wants, Ji Sehun thought, watching Hayeon quietly. Ladies and gentlemen, we will soon be arriving at Incheon Airport. Please check that your seatbelt has been fastened. Thank you, the pilot announced. Ah, that contract, Ji Sehun thought, holding his head in pain. The plane will be landing soon. Could you please fasten your seatbelt, sir? An air hostess asked politely.
Ji Sehun didst respond.
Sir? The hostess repeated, looking confused. What are you doing? Stop giving her a hard time, Hayeon said, walking over to him. She helped him with his seatbelt. Ji Sehun thought to himself, I wasn't going to let her come back to Korea until I heard the words I wanted to hear from her mouth. When she cries, my whole body trembles. Crying because of me makes me feel this way. I just wish she wouldn't cry for another person's death, especially for a man who's not worth a single tear. It's been more than 16 years. Just thinking about his face makes me upset. He shook off his thoughts. Ugh, never mind, he thought inwardly. Ah, here they come.
Hayeon.
Hyungsik called out, waving at them as they rolled their luggage through the airport. Ah. Hyungsik, Miss Lee, you're here too. Hayeon said excitedly. Did you enjoy your vacation? Hyungsik asked them happily, offering to take their bags. Miss Lee noticed something different about Ji Sehun. Are you sure you guys went to a resort? You didn't get tanned at all, Hyungsik remarked. We stayed indoors most of the time, Hayeon replied, hoping they didn't notice Ji Sehun's injury. She tried to divert their attention. You stayed inside? You must have had a lot of fun, Hyungsik said as they walked toward the exit. What could be fun with this guy? All we did was eat and sleep, Hayeon said. So, they did sleep together, Miss Lee thought, verifying her suspicion. Should we go straight to the funeral? Miss Lee asked, turning her gaze to Ji Sehun. I didn't get to sleep. I'm going to rest first and then go, Ji Sehun said. You should rest as well, he told Hayeon, causing her to flinch slightly. Do you guys share the same bed now? Hyungsik asked suddenly. Huh? What? No way. What the heck are you talking about? Hayeon replied, sounding tense. You're not going to sleep? Ji Sehun asked her, still expecting an answer. I'm sure Sehun must be tired. Let's get him home, Hayeon said, smiling but gently nudging him to stay quiet. They left the airport and soon arrived at Ji Sehun's apartment. We'll come pick you up at 1 p.m. You must be exhausted from the flight. Go get some rest. You too, Hayeon. I know you're tired, but please don't forget to unpack his things, Miss Lee said calmly. Okay, don't worry. We'll see you later, Hayeon replied with a smile. Miss Lee and Hyungsik said their farewells, leaving Hayeon and Ji Sehun. Hayeon sighed with relief. I just need to show up, and that's it, right? Ji Sehun asked, pulling off his shirt. Come on, don't be so cold. You should stay for a bit to comfort the host, Hayeon told him firmly. Okay, fine. What will you do for me if I do all that? He asked. Hayeon was silent for a moment, watching his face. What are you even talking about? That mindset of yours is all wrong to begin with. It's basic decency to visit your teacher's funeral, she said. Don't just look at everything by your standard, Ji Sehun remarked. Yes, it is my standard to attend the funeral of someone I used to know. It's polite. What's wrong with that? She asked, her voice sharp. I said I'd do it. I don't want to go, but I'm going because of you, he said, stepping closer to her. Then don't I deserve something for the trouble? He asked. And what would that be? She demanded. Kiss me, I won't be in a good mood when I come back from the funeral. Kiss me when I get back. Then I'll feel better right away, he said. For now, let's get some sleep. I'm tired, he added, holding her hand. In his room, Ji Sehun lay in bed tired. Hayeon watched him rest. He opened his arms, trying to sleep. No. If I crawl into his arms now, he'll hear my heart beating fast. Touching him won't hurt. Right? Hayeon thought as she sat down beside him. You go ahead and sleep. I'm going to go wash up, she said, touching his head. Shower with me later, he said faintly. Your hand is fine now. I'm sure you can shower on your own, she replied, feeling tense. I want to shower together, he said, making her face turn red. She watched him silently as he closed his eyes. Do you want me to go with you to the funeral later? She asked politely. No. I don't want to show you to anyone there, he replied. Ji Sehun was just 5 years old when he began learning the violin. However, he was soon captivated by the deep, resonant sound of the cello, which drew him away from the violin. It was as if the cello was whispering to him, beckoning him to play. His first encounter with the cello was magical. Holding it brought him a sense of comfort. However, Ji Sehun's parents hired Kong Jiseok, the nation's top cello instructor, to guide him. Ji Sehun resented this, as he wanted to connect with the cello on his own terms, but felt constrained by the formal instruction. During their first meeting, Kong Jiseok was stern. Play something you know. I need to assess your skills, he ordered. Ji Sehun, though taken aback by the demand, complied and performed Bach's cello suite. He played with deep emotion and skill, losing himself in the music. Kong Jiseok's reaction was unexpected. No. That's not how you play that piece. He exclaimed, his voice filled with frustration. The way you play is messy and too hasty. This piece is meant to evoke the grace and elegance of aristocrats dancing in a ballroom. You must approach it with more elegance and seriousness, he said, perplexing Ji Sehun. He then took the cello from Ji Sehun and demonstrated his version. If you don't play it this way, you'll never succeed, Kong Jiseok asserted, firmly setting the standard for Ji Sehun's future playing. Ji Sehun began playing the cello exactly as he wished, finally bringing Kong Jiseok a sense of satisfaction. Delighted with his progress, Kong Jiseok took him to Europe to enroll in a prestigious classical music university, eager to showcase Ji Sehun as his prized prodigy. Using a translator, Kong Jiseok proudly proclaimed Ji Sehun as his beloved prodigy, garnering interest from top music professors. When Ji Sehun performed for them, he did so with his own unique style, ignoring the techniques Kong Jiseok had taught him. He played with the knowledge and discoveries he had made on his own. The professors were astonished by his interpretation and technique, praising him for achieving what seemed impossible for someone his age. Ji Sehun vividly remembered the look on Kong Jiseok's face at that moment, a mix of betrayal, despair, and profound admiration. Kong Jiseok's subsequent comments still resonated in Ji Sehun's mind. He played just as I taught him. What a perfect performance. Despite his praise, Ji Sehun saw the underlying madness and greed in Kong Jiseok's eyes. You learned to play like that thanks to me, Kong Jiseok would boast, reveling in his influence over Ji Sehun's success. You might think you outsmarted me, but the joke's on you. If I had let you play your way from the start, you wouldn't be where you are now. You should thank me for pushing you to this level, Kong Jiseok would continue, his arrogance clear. Ji Sehun walked away, his mind conflicted. He had proven himself, but the price had been the constant shadow of Kong Jiseok's manipulative pride. Kong Jiseok's envy drove him to control and oppress Ji Sehun. I made you. You're the genius I created, he would boast, clutching pictures of Ji Sehun. As Ji Sehun rose to prominence as the youngest renowned cellist, Kong Jiseok's obsession grew. Each success Ji Sehun achieved only deepened the resentment in Kong Jiseok's eyes. Whenever Ji Sehun performed abroad, Kong Jiseok was busy conducting interviews in Korea, bragging about Ji Sehun's accomplishments. Ji Sehun, indifferent to Kong Jiseok's self-promotion, chose not to confront him. Kong Jiseok's anger grew as Ji Sehun continued to distance himself, eventually transforming from a respected professor and husband into a relentless stalker. You think your hands will be safe forever, Sehun? Kong Jiseok would ask, his face marked by a sadistic smile. Sehun, hey Sehun, Hayeon said, waking Ji Sehun from his sleep, noticing his sweat. We're here. Why are you sweating so much? Did you have a nightmare? He asked.
Oh, take this.
Your instructor left you a letter before he passed, he said, handing Ji Sehun a letter. Ji Sehun opened it and read, "You would have been nothing without me. Piece of crap."
This too?
He said inwardly. Anger flared within him as he tore the letter into pieces. "You wanted to trap me and control me," he muttered, throwing the scraps aside.
The joke's on you. I don't belong to anyone.
Finally, it's all over, he declared, relieved to be free from Kong Jiseok's shadow. Thank you for joining us on this incredible adventure. If you enjoyed what you watched, please consider liking, subscribing, and ringing that notification bell. Your comments mean the world to us and help us improve. The next episode promises even more excitement and unexpected twists, so stay tuned as we embark on this thrilling journey together. Keep the anticipation alive, and we'll catch you in the next episode.